The story begins with the title, Everyone Looks Like a Pig, and he awakened as a pig butcher. Everything starts inside a modern hospital, specifically in the psychiatric department. A doctor is interviewing her patient, asking if she heard him correctly, that he claims every living thing he sees looks like a pig. The doctor stares seriously at the medical record in her hand. The young man sitting across from her nods, confirming it's true. The doctor looks at him with disbelief. She moves closer, a curious look on her face, and asks if he's joking. Then she asks if that means he also sees her as a pig. The patient nervously nods again, afraid of what he's seeing, because in his eyes, even this beautiful woman in front of him has the face of a pig. The doctor frowns in confusion. She says it's the first time she's encountered such a case. With a curious tone, she tells the young man that he's quite handsome. She stood in front of the young man and slowly unbuttoned his clothes. She then says they'll run a physical examination to check if his body functions are normal. The young man's eyes widen in surprise at her sudden approach. The doctor continues the consultation and asks, "What do you see now?" The patient stares at her silently. What he sees is terrifying. The reflection of a pig-faced woman staring back at him. But in the doctor's mind, she don't believe it. She is beautiful in this. Even in a lunatic's, she couldn't possibly be a pig. But in the eyes of the young man he sees that his cocomelon is 2 pig heads. Finally, he answers, 2 pigs. The doctor steps back in shock, trembling. She tells him that he's seriously ill. Trying to calm herself, she sits back at her desk and begins explaining his condition. She shows him a model of a human spine placed on the table. Pointing at it, she explains that his spine is severely deformed, which could be compressing his brain and optic nerves, causing his distorted vision of people as pigs. The young man listens quietly, shocked, and asks what can be done to fix it. The doctor sighs and replies that surgery is the only option. However, the success rate is low, and failure could result in paralysis from the neck down. The young man falls silent, visibly disturbed. Then, with a dark expression in his eyes, he looks at the doctor and asks coldly, "Are you finished?" The doctor looks confused, and suddenly, the young man's eyes glow a deep crimson red. He asks, "Can you return my spine to me?" The doctor freezes, trembling. She glances at the spinal model in her hands, realizing with horror that he believes it's his own. She whispers, "Such a pity, he's such a handsome young man." The scene shifts to a bus station. Inside a bus, the young man sits quietly, yawning while holding a document labeled, "Psychiatric Disorder." Other passengers glance at him with unease. His name is Chuan. With a cold gaze, he stares at the paper in his hands. In his mind, he recalls that to him, everyone looks like a pig. Even now, every passenger on the bus has the face of one. He believes this may be related to the fact that his parents were both butchers. He murmurs to himself that today marks the day of his awakening ceremony. He had hoped to cure his problem before this day, but it seems that's impossible now. The scene transitions to Xinjiang Academy's awakening ceremony, where students have gathered. At the center of the stage floats a large, glowing crystal. As Yi Chuan arrives, he wonders if his condition will affect his awakening, which would be a serious problem. Suddenly, a girl calls out to him, smiling shyly. "Big brother, you're finally here. If you were late, I'd have beaten you up." She's a beautiful girl, but to Yi Chuan, her hands and face resemble those of a pig. He grimaces at the sight but says nothing. The girl, named Shu Lingxuan, playfully taps his back and asks if he's listening. Yi Chuan only gives her an awkward glance. Nearby students start teasing her. One of them asks why she's holding on to Yi Chuan again, saying they act like a couple and will probably get married after awakening. Annoyed, Shu Lingxuan shouts at them to shut up. Then whispers not to mind her, causing Yi Chuan to shiver at the sight of pig-faced. Then, the principal's voice booms through the hall, ordering everyone to line up according to their ID numbers. The awakening ceremony is about to begin. He reminds them that their awakening will depend on three attributes: strength, agility, and intelligence. The higher their awakened rank, the greater their future potential. A high-rank combat profession would bring fame and honor not only to themselves but also to Xincheng Academy. The ceremony begins. Students place their hands on the crystal one by one. The first student touches the stone. Lightning sparks across it. The crystal glows, showing a mid-rank lifestyle profession: chair craftsman. The student's face twists in disbelief and tears up. The principal only shakes his head. The next student awakens a high-rank lifestyle profession: bricklayer. He falls to his knees in despair. The third student shouts in frustration. His result is a low-rank engineer. Finally, the fourth student approaches the stone, trembling. When he touches it, the crystal bursts into golden light. A message appears: combat profession, rare rank, shadow swordsman. The principal and everyone in the hall are stunned. Cheers erupt as they stare at him in awe. The examiner asks his name. The student proudly answers, Lu Jinglong. The principal pats his shoulder and praises him, saying he'll visit his home later to discuss his future plans with his parents. Lu Jinglong thanks him and walks off the stage proudly, greeted by his cheering classmates. Then the principal calls the next name, Yi Chuan. As Yi Chuan steps onto the stage, Shu Lingxuan cheers for him from the crowd. The principal watches closely, thinking that although this student seems slow, his attribute scores are astonishingly high, 10 points in all three stats, triple the average human level. Yi Chuan calmly places both hands on the crystal. The principal silently wonders if a miracle might happen. Suddenly, a surge of powerful energy bursts from the crystal, surrounded by golden and violet lightning. Everyone gasps in shock. Even the principal, who stares wide-eyed as he exclaims, "A purple golden light." As the smoke around the stone slowly faded, our protagonist was shocked at what he saw. Even the principal was astonished because the stone revealed a god-rank profession. However, what appeared on the stone said that his life profession was god-rank pig butcher. Our protagonist couldn't believe it and asked if it was really a god rank. The principal's face darkened in disappointment when he read that it was only a pig butcher. The students around could hardly contain their laughter. One of them asked why such a ridiculous profession existed, while another wondered if it was a blessing or a curse. The principal lowered his head in frustration, thinking if this was some kind of joke. He, Zhao Mingpin, had been a principal for many years, and finally, he had encountered a god-ranked profession, only for it to be a worthless butcher. Professions like blacksmiths, physician, or alchemists could at least bring glory. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. He thought this child would be a prodigy, but he turned out to be a complete waste. Holding his forehead, the principal struggled to even call out his name, stuttering in disbelief. Suddenly, our protagonist froze as a window system appeared before him. Reading it carefully, he saw a strange message that said, "Nemesis of the Pig Clan." A faint smile crossed his face when he realized that any extra damage dealt by pig-type enemies would be 50%. His eyes gleamed with excitement, feeling as if his mental illness had somehow become an advantage. Since everything in the world looked like pigs to him, this ability seemed perfect. As he walked down the stage, the students in front of him continued to laugh mockingly. Lu Jinglong sneered, saying he thought Xincheng Academy would produce a true dragon, but who would have guessed? It was only a pig butcher. The boy beside him laughed and said there was only one true dragon in Xincheng Academy, and that was him, Lu Jinglong's. With a grin and a mocking laugh, he said he was just joking. Our protagonist walked with his head slightly bowed, and when he reached Lingxuan, she told him that it was okay. She patted his head and praised him for awakening as a god-ranked meat butcher, saying maybe he was following in his father's footsteps. The male students nearby burned with jealousy and anger at what they saw. One cursed under his breath, while another nearly cried, biting his sleeve in frustration, saying how lucky Yi Chuan was. Blushing, Lingxuan shyly said that his father would definitely be proud of him. Looking at her, Our protagonist thought about how they'd been neighbors since childhood. Their families both had life professions and were always close. The principal then called for the next student, Shu Lingxuan. Before stepping up, she teasingly stuck out her tongue at Yi Chuan, saying it was her turn. She wondered whether she'd inherit her mother's tailoring profession or her father's winemaking one, but she didn't care what profession she'd get. She said she would always stay by Yi Chuan's side no matter what. Yi Chuan could only stare at her silently. Slowly, Lingxuan placed her hand on the stone. The giant crystal emitted a brilliant blue light, and everyone could feel the powerful pressure radiating from it. Lingxuan's eyes widened in shock as she looked at the display. Even the principal couldn't believe it. The stone revealed that her combat profession was of legendary rank, Snow Soul Sword Immortal. The principal was astonished. She did not expect Lingxian to awaken a legendary combat profession, especially when her parents only had simple jobs. Lingxian stood in the center of the stage, elegant and composed, with blue energy swirling around her body. The principal approached and smiled. "Don't worry," she said. "If you need help in the future, Qingcheng Academy will do everything to support you." Lingxian bowed slightly, her voice edged with confidence. "Thank you very much," she replied before stepping down from the stage. As she walked, she heard two students whispering at the side. "Isn't her boyfriend just a pig butcher?" One whispered. "And now she's a legendary combat class. Do you think he'll still follow her?" The other laughed. "Probably not. She's surpassed that guy's level. If the man has any shame, he'll leave on his own." When Lingxian approached the protagonist, she gave a light, restrained clap and a small smile. "I know we had our misunderstandings before," she said coldly, "but from now on, that's over. We live in different worlds now." The protagonist froze, seemingly unable to believe it. Behind Lingxian, Lu Jinglong and his group grinned, clearly enjoying the moment. The protagonist forced a smile. "I understand," he said softly. Lingxian nodded. "I know it's hard for you, but stop pretending. You're just an ordinary butcher, and there's nothing wrong with that, but please don't chase me anymore. If you don't object, let's end it here. Don't bother me again." The protagonist smiled faintly and turned away. Finally, he thought, "I'm free from this woman." Lingxian was surprised when she heard the protagonist ask, "Anything else you want to say? If not, I'll be going." Jinglong's grin widened as he stepped forward. "Want me to teach this guy a lesson? So he can see how far apart you two really are." Lingxian remained silent, her cold gaze fixed on the protagonist, and that was enough for Jinglong to understand she agreed. He immediately shouted, loud and mocking, "Hey, pig butcher, come here. Let's see how brave you really are." But Yi Chuan kept walking, ignoring him. Furious, Jinglong ran forward and grabbed Yi Chuan's arm, yelling that he was talking to him and asking if he was deaf. Yi Chuan turned his sharp, glowing eyes toward him and asked coldly what his problem was. His gaze was like that of a demon, causing Jinglong to freeze in fear and step back instinctively. He imagined himself as a pig tied to a chopping block, awaiting slaughter. The watching students couldn't help but laugh loudly. One of Jinglong's friends came forward, asking what was wrong, but Jinglong only cursed in anger. Humiliated, he launched a sneak attack while Yi Chuan's back was turned. Before his punch could land, Yi Chuan swiftly met it with his own fist, his eye glowing brightly. Jinglong screamed as pain shot through his arm. His hand was crushed and swollen. Lingxian and his friend were stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened. "This is impossible," Jinglong shouted. "He's just a pig butcher." Standing firm, Yi Chuan replied coldly, "I am a butcher, so it's only natural that I'm strong." Jinglong's friends rushed forward, shocked by the condition of his hand. Consumed with rage, Jinglong screamed that he would kill Yi Chuan. A glowing blue sword appeared in his hand. Seeing this, one of the gossiping girls whispered that it was over. Jinglong was serious now, and Yi Chuan was as good as dead. The other wondered why a mere butcher would dare fight someone from a combat class, saying he should have just apologized. Pointing his sword at Yi Chuan, Jinglong shouted that his blade could cut through steel pipes, vowing to cripple him. But before he could strike, the air suddenly turned cold, and snowflakes began to fall. His sword froze, and ice spread rapidly across his body. Terrified, Jinglong tried to move but couldn't. He struggled to turn his head toward Shu Lingxuan, angrily demanding why she was helping him. Lingxuan stood tall, surrounded by a chilling, powerful aura. In a cold voice, she told them to stop fighting. She looked at both of them and said she didn't want to see them fighting because of her. Lingxian stepped forward and said he had to accept that they no longer belonged to the same world. She said this would be the last time she would help Yi Chuan, and also, their final farewell to the past. Instead of feeling sad, our main character just stood there indifferently, scratching his ear. As Shu Lingxuan turned away, he gave Yi Chuan one last warning, to leave Qingcheng, because the next time Lu Jinglong sought revenge, he would no longer help him. But this didn't bother our protagonist. He simply yawned and calmly said that if there was nothing else, he would be leaving, then started to walk away. The two gossiping onlookers were confused, wondering why our main character didn't seem to take the situation seriously. The scene shifted. Our main character was now walking alone in the city during sunset. He suddenly stopped when a woman with a large dog blocked his path. The dog barked loudly, becoming an obstacle in his way, and he stared at them. Then his vision changed. The woman turned into a gigantic pig, and the dog into a monstrous wild boar. As the dog bit the hem of his pants, the protagonist remained calm and asked the woman if she could pull her pig away, then corrected himself, saying dog, because it was blocking the road. The woman became angry. In his vision, the pig woman stepped closer, shouting if he owned the street, if he had no manners, and that young people nowadays had no compassion. But instead of getting angry, he felt a sense of peace. He took a deep breath, thinking this was the perfect chance to test his new power. Without hesitation, he kicked the dog with full force. His foot glowed faintly with blue energy, and the woman's eyes widened in shock. With a single kick, the creature died instantly. The woman froze, tears falling down her face as the spirit of her beloved pet floated upward. Crying, she called to her son, begging it not to scare its mother. Suddenly, a notification appeared. His extra damage increased by 1%. He was stunned. His hunch had been right. It actually worked. The woman, furious, lunged toward him, screaming that he was a murderer and demanding how he dared to kill her child. She shouted that she would kill him in return. But the protagonist remained calm. As her sharp nails drew closer to his face, he coldly said that she was mentally ill. He took out his medical certificate and showed her the words severe mental disorder written on it. With a chilling stare, he asked if there was anything else, and if not, he would be leaving. The woman froze, her mind blank with fear. In that moment, she truly believed he was insane. If he could kill her dog without hesitation, he could easily kill her too. Forcing a nervous smile, she muttered, "Never mind, take care." The scene then shifted. The protagonist was now back home, greeted warmly by his parents. His father, a broad-shouldered man, laughed heartily and asked if he had really become a butcher, while his mother smiled gently beside him. The protagonist said nothing, only gazing at them quietly. His father commented that he smelled terrible but proudly said he was glad his son was following in his footsteps. He told him that being an honest pig butcher was better than living a life filled with killing. Then, with a cheerful tone, he added that he would take him to the slaughterhouse tomorrow so he could get familiar with the work. That night, our protagonist slept soundly, wearing pajamas decorated with pig designs. Outside the house, a shadow with glowing blue eyes approached the window of his parents' room. As his father lay in bed with eyes closed, he told the shadow that he was sure it already knew his son was just an ordinary butcher. He warned it not to disturb their lives again. The shadow, whose face was wrapped in bandages, murmured in disbelief. Was the son of Ghost Cry really just a butcher? It asked if Yi Chuan was truly Yi Qiwan's son. In the darkness, Yi Qiwan's eyes snapped open, glowing red with fury. He warned the shadow not to disturb them again, that next time, he wouldn't be polite. The shadow replied not to be angry, saying its suspicions were now confirmed. Since his son was only a butcher, the organization would leave them alone. Then, the shadow vanished into the night. The next day, Yi Qiwan took his son to the family's slaughterhouse. The facility was large, filled with hanging pig carcasses. Wearing a black apron, our protagonist followed his father seriously. His father said that to become a good butcher, he needed a good knife. He led him to a special case containing 3 large cleavers and told him to choose one. Yi Chuan examined them and picked the one in the middle. As he grasped it, a blue notification appeared. He had selected the pig-slaying knife and activated his god-slaying edge. For every pig he killed using this knife, he would automatically gain 0.1 attribute points. As the son held his weapon, Yi Qiwan began the first lesson. The first step, he said, was to learn how to use the knife. A large pig hung in front of them. In the protagonist's eyes, it appeared as a huge wild boar, groaning faintly. His father instructed him to aim for its weak point to ensure a clean kill, and to try it himself. He swung hard, slashing the hanging pig, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The pig died instantly. A blue notification appeared, saying he had killed one pig using the butcher knife. He gained 1% extra damage, his level increased by 1%, and he received 0.1 attribute points. His father looked startled and slightly uneasy, sweating as he told his son he did well, but there was one problem. The target he hit wasn't in the best spot for a clean kill. He should aim for the main artery in the neck. The protagonist silently turned to him, surprised by what he heard. Then his father approached and placed a hand on his head, saying he knew that butchering pigs could be boring for someone his age, but this was their way of life. The protagonist pointed at the other pigs and asked if he could kill all of them. His father laughed heartily, saying, "That's my boy," and told him that if he really wanted to, he could handle all the pigs, even those meant for Uncle Lee's and Uncle Chen's. As his eyes glowed red, he slashed the pig's throat. Once it died, a notification appeared. His level increased by 1%, his extra damage rose by 1%, and he received another 0.1 attribute point. His rank increased to level 2. He killed another pig. His rank rose to level 3. He continued slaughtering pigs non-stop until sunset. By then, he sat surrounded by hanging carcasses, watching the notifications before him. It stated he had killed 49 pigs, gaining 100% extra damage and raising all his stats from 10 to 15. His current rank was level 5 beginner. From a distance, his father watched with another man, who asked if that was really his son. He remarked that the boy seemed addicted to the work, as he'd been doing it every day for a week. Yi Qiwan just laughed proudly, while the man beside him stared, saying that after all, his son was a god-level butcher. As our protagonist looked at his knife, he thought that he was already used to it. Maybe it was time to leave the slaughterhouse and see the outside world. The next day, he left home with a backpack, thinking about how in this world, countless monster races were growing stronger and demons were spreading rapidly. Humanity was no longer divided into nations, they had formed a human federation divided into 9 special zones. Qingcheng City was located at the border of the 5th special zone. The scene shifted to the city's border, where our protagonist walked toward the massive gate. He was stopped by a large axe. The man holding it told him that since his profession was a life skill class, once he left the city, he should stay within a 1-kilometer radius. Going farther would put him in grave danger. The man asked if he understood. Our protagonist simply stared at him seriously and said nothing. Upon leaving Qingcheng City, he headed straight into the forest. As he walked, rustling sounds came from behind him. Suddenly, a goblin appeared, laughing while holding a knife. Then its appearance changed. In his eyes, it became a pig goblin. Judging by the color, he thought it really was a goblin. He activated his skill, Blood Shadow Butcher. His eyes glowed red as he thought this was the perfect time to test his power. Sensing danger, the goblin screamed in fear, but before it could react, our protagonist slashed its neck with his butcher knife. A notification appeared, saying that he had killed a goblin boar. He received a 5% level increase and 1% extra damage. As he read it, he thought that killing a strong boar must mean he would also gain a significant amount of experience. While staring at the blue notification, green eyes started appearing from the darkness behind him. He turned slightly and remembered what his teacher once said: "When you see one goblin, it means the others are nearby." He smirked and said that it was time for a massive level up. He even called out for the goblin boars to come out. When they appeared, he simply stood still as the goblins charged at him all at once. Before they could get close, he began attacking them one by one using his heavy butcher's knife. Soon, only one goblin remained in front of him, trembling in fear. As his eyes glowed red, he told the last goblin to come at him, that they were going to play. The goblin's eyes widened in horror and it turned to run away. He immediately chased after it until he reached a cave. He said that this must be where the goblins were hiding. He entered, eyes glowing and a grin on his face. Moments later, screams echoed throughout the cave. Not long after, the dead goblins lay scattered on the ground, and his notification showed that all his stats had increased and his level had reached rank 6. But while he was observing this, he heard a noise coming from behind him. He turned quickly and saw a closed door making sounds. He kicked it hard, breaking it open, and upon entering, he saw a woman's leg. When he saw her fully, he found a woman trembling, her hands tied, clothes torn, crying with a gag in her mouth. Around her were 2 infant goblins trying to feed from her. When the woman saw that it was a human who entered, tears flowed even more. She couldn't speak, but in her mind, she was begging for help. Her fear grew, not because of the goblins, but because of what she saw. The man held a large knife, not an ordinary one, but a butcher's knife sharp enough to split even the thickest bone. He raised it, and in the woman's mind, she was screaming for him not to kill her. Her heart pounded wildly, feeling like it would burst. In the next moment, the sound of the blade cutting through the air echoed sharply. When she opened her eyes, she realized she wasn't the one struck. The 2 infant goblins beside her had been sliced apart. The attack was so powerful that the gag in her mouth and the ropes tying her hands came loose. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Chuan sat calmly in front of her, his voice cold and steady as he told her she could stop screaming. The goblins were already gone. The woman slowly turned her head and saw the last goblin, a tiny one, sprawled lifeless on the cave floor. Overwhelmed, she stumbled toward Chuan, clutching his arm as tears spilled down her face. She kept thanking him, saying that if he hadn't shown up, the goblins would have ruined her life. But Chuan, face blank and emotionless, simply responded that saving her wasn't his intention. She ignored his tone and started firing questions one after another. Did he really take down all the goblins alone? What kind of fighter was he? What class did he belong to? What was his name? He didn't answer at first. Not until they stepped out of the dark cave into the open air. Only then did he speak. My name is Chuan. Once they reached the clearing outside, he pointed toward a narrow trail leading downhill. When you exit the forest, he said, follow that road. It'll take you straight to the city. The scene shifted to the dark forest. As Chuan walked, he didn't notice a pair of eyes watching him from afar. It was the woman, secretly following him, hiding among the trees. Suddenly, Chuan appeared in front of her, almost making her soul jump out in fright. He asked why she was following him. Was she a goblin spy? His knife was pointed straight at her. She stepped back, trembling, unable to answer immediately. She said no, she couldn't go back alone. Yi Chuan asked for her name and why she was there. She said her name was Sha. It was her mother's birthday, and she wanted to pick a blood moon flower as a gift. She didn't expect to be captured by goblins. She offered him a deal. If he helped her find the blood moon flower, she would help him find the best blacksmith in Qingcheng to forge a new knife, pointing out that his current one was already dull. But Yekuan replied coldly, asking if she even knew how expensive the best blacksmith in Qingcheng was. He told her to go back and stop following him, or he'd cut her down. The woman, both angry and confused, placed her hands on her hips, thinking that she was beautiful, yet this man treated her like nothing. She thought maybe he was mentally ill. As they continued walking, the woman asked if he really didn't know who she was. She said her father was Sha Beihai. Yi Chuan paused. Sha Beihai, one of the 4 most powerful aristocrats in Qingcheng. A 9th rank master class transferee, nearly a grandmaster. If that was true, then with her father's wealth, he could have 10 top-tier knives made. Weapons would no longer be a problem. The woman showed a badge, the Xia clan protective token. Even a climbing pond realm transferee couldn't hurt her, but the goblins, being cunning, caught her by surprise. Unable to attack her directly, they imprisoned her instead. Yi Chuan leaned closer, inspecting the token, their faces almost touching. The woman blushed deeply, her heart racing as she tried not to look away. After confirming it, Yi Chuan stepped back and said he believed her. He agreed to help her find the blood moon flower. The woman, surprised and delighted, smiled and shook his hand. Holding a piece of paper, she said it was a map she bought from someone, showing the flower's location. She warned him about the blood moon python guarding it, as strong as a 9th rank apprentice, extremely dangerous. Yi Chuan asked if he heard correctly, there was a python. The woman confirmed, according to Wilderness Survival Guide, the blood moon python has power comparable to a 9th rank apprentice. She didn't know if he could handle it. But Yi Chuan only smiled and said he had never seen a python before. The woman thought he wasn't listening to her, but remembering how he wiped out all the goblins in one strike, she suspected he might actually be a god-tier combat class. Smiling faintly, Yi Chuan told her to lead the way. The woman hesitated for a moment, staring at him with mixed feelings, unsure why this man made her feel both trust and doubt. The scene shifted to a grassy field. They were hiding from a rhino. The woman warned him not to provoke the silver-horned rhino, it was as strong as an 8th rank apprentice. She said they should quietly pass by. But suddenly, Yi Chuan stood up, shocking her. She asked what he was doing. He replied that if it dared to eat grass today, it meant it would eat humans tomorrow. He wouldn't let it live. The woman's eyes widened, turning pale, asking if that was really his reason. Before she could stop him, Yi Chuan charged toward the rhino. As he approached, he unleashed 3 swift and powerful slashes. The rhino fell to the ground, bloodied and lifeless. The woman stood frozen, stunned by what she saw. She couldn't believe what just happened, that he had killed it with a single attack. At that moment, she realized, this man was something else. His strength was beyond anything she'd ever seen. After successfully killing the silverhorn rhinoceros, a system window immediately appeared in front of the protagonist's vision, confirming that he had leveled up to rank 7 apprentice. His pig clan nemesis bonus damage also increased to 122%. As he looked at his simple butcher knife, now showing signs of wear and damage, he wondered how much longer it could last against enemies this strong. Meanwhile, the girl, still unable to believe what she had witnessed, suddenly approached him and firmly asked what his profession was. Calmly, he replied that he was a life-type profession, a pig butcher. The girl's eyes widened in disbelief, insisting that it was impossible for someone with a life-type profession to kill a silverhorn rhinoceros in a single strike. The protagonist ignored her and walked toward the rhino's corpse. He started slicing off the valuable silver horn of the beast, thinking to himself that it was a nice harvest. He casually explained that maybe the rhino was old, which made it easier to kill. Though still confused, The girl seemed to accept his explanation and mentioned that they were getting close to the place where the blood moon flower could be found. She thought to herself that this boy didn't seem to be lying. The two continued their journey together. The scene shifted to another part of the forest, where the principal of Qingcheng Academy was walking with his students, Xu Lingxuan, Lu Jinglong, and two others. The principal praised them for their performance during field training and smiled at Xu Lingxuan and the smug Lu Jinglong, saying they were the students he had the highest hopes for. Suddenly, the principal stopped. He sensed something unusual nearby and sternly said that someone was moving close to them. He shouted toward the forest, ordering whoever was there to come out. From the shadows of the trees, two figures emerged, Yi Chuan and Sha Nanan. The two stepped into a clearing and faced the group from Qingcheng Academy. The protagonist was surprised, wondering why they were there. Their reunion was far from pleasant. Lu Jinglong reacted first. Pointing at Yi Chuan with a sneer, he angrily demanded to know what he was doing there. Casually scratching his head, Yi Chuan smiled and said he was just passing through. Lu Jinglong's anger deepened. Passing through? Don't joke with me, he shouted. A female student with large, cocoa melons, chimed in sarcastically, saying she didn't believe he was just passing by, accusing him of still being unable to forget Xu Lingxuan and following her here. Yi Chuan's eyes widened slightly as he turned to Xu Lingxuan, who still looked at him with cold disdain, her face, in his eyes, resembling a terrifying pig. She called out his name with a chilling tone, reminding him that she had already told him they were from different worlds now, and demanded he stop following her. From Yi Chuan's body, a dark red aura began to seep out as he clenched his fists, struggling to control his anger. Seeing this as an opportunity, Lu Jinglong smirked and yelled that this was perfect. He had long been waiting for the chance to get revenge. He released his energy. A purple aura enveloped his body, and a shimmering sword resembling a katana appeared in his hand. His companion exclaimed that it must be a yellow rank, low-grade spirit weapon. The principal watched silently, impressed by Lu Jinglong's rapid progress. In just a few days, he had reached rank 4 apprentice and obtained such a strong weapon. He thought Lu Jinglong could probably fight even a rank 6 apprentice. As the tension rose, Xu Lingxuan stepped forward and coldly reminded Yi Chuan that she had already warned him to leave Qingcheng. This time, she said, she wouldn't help him anymore. Beside Yi Chuan, Sha Nanan blushed, looking worried, and asked if he had some grudge against those people. But instead of answering, Yi Chuan calmly asked her how much a yellow rank, low-grade spirit weapon was worth. Sha Nanan, startled by the question, hesitated before saying it might be worth hundreds of thousands, then asked if he even understood how serious the situation was. Meanwhile, Lu Jinglong, consumed by rage, recalled the humiliation he suffered at the awakening ceremony when Yi Chuan stole his spotlight. Determined to take revenge, he shouted and leapt into the air, swinging his glowing sword down toward Yi Chuan with all his strength. The principal and the others widened their eyes. Yi Chuan didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he raised his worn butcher knife to block the attack. The moment their weapons clashed, Lu Jinglong's confidence surged. The blade of Yi Chuan's knife shattered completely. Smirking triumphantly, Lu Jinglong mocked him, saying he'd make sure Yi Chuan never butchers another pig again. The principal frowned deeply, thinking that an ordinary knife was like paper against a spirit weapon, wondering why Yi Chuan would provoke Lu Jinglong like that. But suddenly, the situation shifted. Yi Chuan looked at his broken knife, then carelessly threw it to the ground. Coldly, he said, "I don't need a knife to end you." Lu Jinglong completely lost his temper. He yelled at Yi Chuan, asking if he still had the guts to act arrogant, then warned him not to blame him if things turned brutal. With a furious leap, he raised his sword for another strike. But before the blade could even touch him, Yi Chuan stepped forward, calm, steady, and fearless. He didn't even draw a weapon. He simply met the attack with his fist. With a swift movement, he slipped past the sword's edge and hammered a punch straight into Lu Jinglong's chest. The force was insane. Lu Jinglong shot backward like a ragdoll and smacked into the ground face first. Everyone went silent. Even the principal was stunned speechless. Lu Jinglong's friend rushed over, shouting his name and shaking him in panic. Jinglong tried to answer, insisting he was fine, but his voice trembled, and he was clearly about to pass out. But the principal wasn't looking at him anymore. His eyes were glued to Yi Chuan as the boy walked closer. With disbelief, he asked, "Don't tell me, you've already stepped into 7th rank apprentice." Yi Chuan didn't respond. Instead, he picked up the spirit weapon that Lu Jinglong had dropped. Examining the sword, he remarked to himself that it was well made. Lu Jinglong's companions were shocked, asking the principal if it was really possible that Yi Chuan had already reached rank 7, especially since even Shu Lingxuan, a natural talent, was only rank 6. The principal, serious-faced, nodded. He explained the difference between combat professions and life-type professions. Combat types grow through continuous fighting and hardship, so their early progress is slow. But once they establish their foundation, their growth skyrockets. Life professions, however, progress faster early on, like alchemists or weaponsmiths, since they only need to hone their craft. He used Yi Chuan as an example. As a pig butcher, he only needed to keep butchering pigs to increase his level. A brief flashback showed him easily slaughtering pigs, proof of his straightforward path to power. After hearing this, Shu Lingxuan realized that Yi Chuan's victory wasn't due to superior skill, but because of his higher base stats from his higher rank. She quietly thought that it didn't seem fair. The principal added that balance still existed. For Yi Chuan, the number of pigs required to level up would double each time. Eventually, it would take an enormous number to reach higher ranks, while combat professions would grow faster and surpass him later. Lu Jinglong's friend asked if that meant Yi Chuan was stronger now, but combat classes would overtake him in time. The principal nodded in agreement, though concern flickered in his eyes. Hearing all this, Yi Chuan simply smiled and waved. He told the principal that if there was nothing else, he'd be leaving, then casually turned to go. As he walked away, Shu Lingxuan spoke with pity, asking why he was still doing all this, if all his pig butchering was just to prove something to her. Then she proudly declared that she had been accepted into Skydome Academy, emphasizing that they truly lived in different worlds now. Yi Chuan looked at her silently, expressionless. Unable to hold back any longer, Sha Nanan stepped between them, shouting angrily if they could stop this nonsense. She explained that Yi Chuan was only helping her find the blood moon flower, and this meeting was just bad luck. She scolded them for their assumptions, her hands on her hips. The big cocoa melon student mocked her for defending a man who had been dumped, while Lu Jinglong's friend sneered that Yi Chuan was a master at flirting, saying he'd already found a new woman. Xiaonan had enough. She slapped them all across the face, one by one. Even the principal got hit by accident, left stunned with a red handprint on his cheek. Standing beside Yi Chuan, Xiaonan glared fiercely and shook her hand. Shu Lingxuan, clutching her own flushed cheek, trembled with rage. She shouted, asking how Sha Nanan dared to hit her. Her anger flared. An icy blue aura burst from her body as she drew her sword, the Soul Snow Sword, and demanded if Xiaonan had a death wish. But Xiaonan stood firm. She raised a family protection amulet, a clear symbol of her powerful lineage, and dared anyone to touch her. The principal broke into a cold sweat, recognizing the Sha family crest. He quickly stopped Shu Lingxuan, realizing that Xiaonan was none other than the young miss of the Sha family. His attitude shifted instantly from stern to respectful. He apologized and asked what brought her there. But Xiaonan coldly replied that she could go wherever she pleased, and even scolded the principal for his students' poor behavior. Ashamed, the principal bowed and promised to discipline them once they returned. Yet Sha Nanan wasn't done. She pointed at Shu Lingxuan and demanded that she apologize to Yi Chuan. Shu Lingxuan froze, realizing who Sha Nanan was, the daughter of Sha Beihai, and wondered why someone of such high status would associate with Yi Chuan. Fearing to offend the Xia family, the principal sternly ordered Shu Lingxuan to apologize immediately. Reluctantly, she bowed her head and muttered a half-hearted apology. But inside, fury burned. She swore that the Xia family would regret this humiliation. Yi Chuan, bored of the drama, waved his hand and told Xianan they should leave. He joked that if they stayed longer, he'd miss the last bus. As they turned away, Lu Jinglong, kneeling on the ground, shouted weakly after them, demanding that Yi Chuan return his spirit weapon. But Yi Chuan walked off casually with the sword slung over his shoulder, teasing him to come take it back if he could. Xianan even stuck out her tongue mockingly. Lu Jinglong could only clutch his chest, shaking with rage, screaming that Yi Chuan would regret this. Leaving the academy group behind, Yi Chuan and Sha Nanan continued their mission. They crossed rocky terrain until Xianan pulled a map from between her cocoa melons. Looking at a glowing red cave ahead, she confirmed it was the place. She warned Yi Chuan to be careful. As they prepared, Yi Chuan received a system notification. He had officially chosen the spirit weapon as his exclusive butcher knife, activating its effect, God-slaying edge. Thanks to its higher quality, he would now receive 0.2 free attribute points per pig killed, double the previous rate. As he admired the weapon, he thought about how important it was to choose a good knife. Then, Sha Nanan pulled two small colorful pearls from her chest area, startling Yi Chuan. He asked if she had a treasure chest hidden in there and what those were. Blushing furiously, she explained that they were Yin Thunder Fire beads, powerful explosives that could deal massive damage even to strong opponents. Her last resort if the Blood Moon Great Python proved too strong. Yi Chuan smirked, calling her impressive, then said he'd go ahead to scout the area. He leapt skillfully down the cliff, using his sword for balance. He landed near a ledge covered in beautiful, glowing red flowers. As he examined one closely, fascinated by its brilliance, Xianan shouted in excitement that they were really there, and that this wasn't just any blood moon flower, but a blood crystal twin flower. She cheered that they were incredibly lucky. But her joy quickly vanished as she sensed something in the darkness. A gigantic shadow with blazing red eyes emerged from the cave behind Yi Chuan, staring directly at the flower he was holding. Startled by the monstrous presence, Yi Chuan turned around and saw the Blood Moon Great Python, though in his unique vision, its head resembled that of a pig. The massive beast faced him, its breath heavy and menacing. Yi Chuan, however, remained completely calm. Coldly, he asked, "What are you looking at? Haven't you ever seen a man pick flowers before?" For a moment, the massive serpent monster was confused by the protagonist's courage and shamelessness. And in that same instant, the beast was caught off guard, because the protagonist suddenly turned around and ran away from where he stood. From the opposite cliff, he shouted at Xianan, telling her not to just stand there gaping, and ordered her to hurry up. Seeing that the giant serpent was preparing to attack, she warned the protagonist to be careful while getting ready to throw the explosive she was holding. With all her strength, she hurled her Yin Thunder Fire bead. It flew through the air and exploded right in the python's face. A deafening blast of fire roared out, sending the protagonist crashing to the ground. Sha Nanan immediately called out to him, asking if he was all right. From the edge of the cliff, the two of them watched the aftermath of the explosion. They were both stunned. The enormous head of the Blood Moon Great Python was completely destroyed by the power of the bead. The protagonist wondered aloud if the bead was really that powerful. The gigantic body of the serpent then plummeted down the cliff, and they watched as it fell rapidly out of sight. Feeling relieved, the protagonist handed the blood crystal twin flower to Xianan. Her face blushed with joy as she accepted the shimmering blossom. The next moment, the protagonist asked her what the flower was really for. Sha Nanan explained that the blood crystal twin flower was a mutated version of the blood moon flower. While the ordinary kind could only slow down aging, this one granted eternal youth. No woman could ever refuse such a treasure, she said. The protagonist listened silently, and then a new purpose rose in his heart. He took up his sword and decided that this flower would surely make his mother happy. He jumped toward the other cliff, and Sha Nanan, feeling excited, thought he was going to pick another flower for her, believing he had caught on to her hint. But to her surprise, she saw Yi Chuan carefully tuck the flower away into his backpack instead. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble with a deafening roar. To their shock, the massive serpent rose once again from the depths of the cliff below. Sha Nanan froze in disbelief. She couldn't comprehend how it had survived even after being struck by the thunder fire bead. She whispered that it must have reached the peak of rank 9. Quickly, Yi Chuan asked if she had another bead. Startled and flustered, Sha Nanan replied that her father had only given her one pair. Now, the serpent glared at the protagonist, its red eyes burning with rage. Instead of backing down, the protagonist used his unique ability, Blood Shadow Butcher. He released a terrifying aura, projecting his image into the mind of the serpent. The beast's eyes widened in fear and it froze for a moment. In that instant, the protagonist quickly jumped, grabbed Xianan's hand, and shouted at her, asking why she was just standing there. They needed to run. With her cheeks flushed, she replied nervously that of course she was waiting for him, because he risked his life just to get another blood crystal flower for her. But the protagonist coldly answered, "It's for my mother." Sha Nanan's romantic expectations were crushed, and she grimaced in frustration. Then, the massive serpent snapped out of its fear and attacked again, fiercer and hungrier than before. It opened its gigantic jaws and lunged at them. At that moment, Xianan said in despair that it was over, they were going to be caught. The protagonist cursed in his mind, thinking that this woman really caused him a lot of trouble. Before the serpent could devour them both, he shoved Sha Nanan away to save her. With a loud crash, he was swallowed whole by the massive serpent. Sha Nanan screamed, her eyes wide in horror as she called out the protagonist's name. She kept shouting, asking if he could hear her, commanding him to come out of the monster's body. The giant serpent attacked again, and just as it opened its mouth to devour her, a bright red light burst from its side. Yechuan's sword pierced through from within. A crimson glow flared from its throat, slicing through its flesh in a violent slash. Sha Nanan stared in shock as the serpent's massive head fell before her. Amid the gory scene, the protagonist emerged, drenched in the creature's blood. He stood up and calmly asked Xianan if she had been calling his name earlier. Overwhelmed with relief, she threw her arms around him, nearly crying with joy, thanking him for being safe and saying she didn't want anyone dying because of her. But then she frowned and glared at him, complaining that he stank, and that she almost got spat out by the serpent as waste. A system notification appeared. Special type beast defeated successfully. Yi Chuan's level increased by nearly 80%, reaching rank 8. His bonus damage against beasts rose by 1%, and he gained an additional 0.2 free attribute points. After their victory, the protagonist suggested they head back. When they returned to Qingcheng, they were greeted by worried faces. An elderly man in traditional attire hurried over, overjoyed to see Sha Nanan again, saying he'd almost fallen sick from worry and had already been about to send people to search for her. But Xianan smiled brightly and presented the shining flower, saying they had found it and that her mother would surely be pleased. The steward scolded her, saying that if she wanted a blood crystal flower, they could have easily ordered their men to look for it. The outside world was dangerous, and something terrible could have happened to her. But Sha Nanan ignored him and insisted that she wanted to personally pick it for her mother, and that there was no problem since she had someone protecting her. The steward turned to look at the young man and asked who he was. Without hesitation, the protagonist replied, "I am Yi Chuan, a pig butcher." The old man froze, puzzled. He thought that since the blood moon great python appeared wherever blood crystal flowers grew, why would Miss Shaw find a fool with a life-type profession to protect her? But when he looked at the boy again, he couldn't deny that this youth might really have slain a blood moon great python. In the end, He praised the protagonist and removed a golden ring from his finger, offering it as a reward, saying it was worth 200,000 for helping their young lady. But the protagonist brushed it aside coldly and said, "I don't need it. I only want a butcher's knife." Our protagonist rejected the manager's offer, repeatedly saying that the only thing he wanted was a butcher's knife. The manager asked in confusion why he wanted a knife for slaughtering pigs, wondering if there was something wrong with the young man's head for refusing such a valuable thing in exchange for a simple tool. Sha Nanan stepped forward to explain. She told the manager, whom she called Master Zhao, that the young hero wanted to find the best blacksmith in Qingcheng to forge a spirit weapon for him, as they had agreed. Upon understanding this, the manager agreed to handle it. He urged Sha Nanan to go home with her guards, as her father was already worried. As she was being led away, Sha Nanan waved at our protagonist, asking if they would see each other again. After she left, the manager faced our protagonist with a serious expression. He said that while their family was grateful, he warned him not to entertain any inappropriate thoughts about the young lady. In our protagonist's mind, he had no romantic interest at all, since he only saw Sha Nanan as another pig-headed person. He assured the manager that there was no problem and that all he wanted was a top-tier spirit weapon. When the manager understood, he immediately turned around and informed our protagonist that the best blacksmith in Qingcheng, Master Tai Xin, had good relations with their family. He told Yi Chuan to visit him the next day after he had arranged everything. Having said that, the manager left. The scene shifted to a forest clearing where the giant snake had been slain. Now its massive monster was being eaten by wild animals. A new mysterious figure appeared, a beautiful demon woman with horns and glowing yellow eyes. She glared at the snake's corpse with deep anger, declaring that humans had killed her pet monster and stolen her treasure. Her forked tongue flicked out as she said she had memorized their scent, and they would not escape her. As one of her eyes glowed, she released a strong red aura from her entire body, spreading around and terrifying the animals that fed on the snake's corpse. The scene shifted back to the city. Yi Chuan was walking calmly down the street, a spirit weapon he had taken earlier strapped to his back. He entered a shop known for buying monster materials at high prices. The female shopkeeper greeted him, and Yi Chuan placed a silverhorn rhinoceros horn on the counter. Her eyes widened. A kid like him, hunting a silverhorn rhino. She immediately offered him 10,000 for the horn. Yi Chuan was shocked. That amount was the equivalent of his father slaughtering 100 pigs. As he processed the number, something on the display shelf caught his eye. A shining piece of armor. He pointed at it and asked if 10,000 was enough to buy it. The shopkeeper smiled warmly. He had good taste. The armor, she explained, was golden scale soft armor, made from the scales of a fire serpent. Light, durable, warm, and excellent for protection. But its price was 150,000. Yi Chuan almost choked. His father would have to butcher 1,500 pigs just to earn that kind of money. The shopkeeper blinked in confusion when he mentioned pigs. She clearly didn't understand what he meant. Thinking quickly, Yi Chuan asked if she accepted trades. He placed the spirit weapon he had taken from Lu Jinglong on the counter. The moment she saw it, her eyes sparkled. It was a genuine yellow rank spirit weapon. She happily agreed, saying the trade was more than enough. She immediately helped him try the armor on, saying it fit him perfectly, almost like it was meant for him. But in her mind, she was plotting. A young man carrying so many rare items, he must be strong. If she could win him over, her future would be set. She slipped closer, her hands, adjusting the armor while sliding along his shoulders and waist. She said normally there would be a 10,000 coin processing fee. But for someone as handsome as you, I'll waive it. She added that she just needed an opportunity to thank him properly. But in Yi Chuan's vision, she transformed into a blushing, seductive pig-headed creature leaning toward him. She asked what his occupation was. Without hesitation, Yi Chuan answered honestly, "I'm a pig butcher." The shopkeeper froze completely. Her eyes went wide. A pig butcher. The scene then shifted back to the Yi family's home. Yi Chuan handed his mother a glowing blood crystal twin flower. She was stunned. The item was rare and extremely valuable. She immediately questioned where he got it. Her shock soon turned into suspicion. She scolded him, accusing him of stealing it. Yi Chuan hurriedly made up a story about seeing two giant snakes fighting, and the flower just happened to fall to the ground. His mother didn't buy it. She pinched his cheek and scolded him for wandering into such dangerous places, reminding him that their family were simple pig butchers. They had no ability to deal with the dangers hiding in the forest. She forbade him from ever going there again. Our protagonist weakly agreed, saying he would not act rashly in the future. From the doorway, his father, Yi Chi Yuan, overheard the conversation and laughed proudly. But the moment was suddenly interrupted when someone shouted outside, demanding that Yi Chi Yuan come out. He opened the door, asking who they were. He saw two furious men. The leader, a man with fiery red hair, was Lu Xing. He confronted Yi Chi Yuan, accusing his son of stealing his own son's spirit weapon. Shocked, Yi Chi Yuan immediately called him Brother Lu and said there must be some mistake. In his mind, Lu Xing was once his childhood playmate, but now a well-known 6th-rank climbing pond realm professional in the city. Because of their gap in status, they had grown distant. He continued to plead, explaining that his son was just a simple pig butcher and could not possibly have stolen a spirit weapon. His explanation was cut short when Lu Jinglong stepped out from behind his father, pointing at our protagonist and shouting that he had taken his weapon. Lu Xing mocked his former friend, asking why he could not even raise his own son properly. He said he had confirmed the story with Principal Zhao Ming and only came after verifying the details. He demanded that Yi Chi Yuan ask his son himself if the accusation was true. The worry was clear on Yi Qiwan's face as he turned to our protagonist, who avoided his gaze and looked tense. Sweating, he asked his son what really happened. Our protagonist did not avoid the truth. He looked at Lu Jinglong and explained to Lu Xing that his son had tried to kill him. He said he only took the sword as payback and that Lu Jinglong was lucky he had even let him go. Lu Jinglong shouted in fury, denying it and insisting he had only wanted to spar. Lu Xing ignored his son's cries and offered a solution. He said that out of respect for Yi Chi Yuan, he was willing to forget the matter if the sword was simply returned. But our protagonist directly answered that he had already sold the sword. That revelation struck like lightning. Lu Xing, Lu Jinglong, and even Yi Chi Yuan were stunned, speechless, and frozen in shock. The weight of the truth crashed down on them all, leaving them in utter disbelief. The news that the sword had been sold greatly shocked Lu Xing, Lu Jinglong, and Yi Kai Yuan, leaving them stunned in disbelief. When he recovered, Lu Xing's face darkened with rage and he directly told the protagonist that since the sword was gone, he would have to compensate with the sum of 1 million. Yi Kai Yuan tried to plead, saying the amount was excessive and that a spirit weapon of that kind was only worth around 200,000, but Lu Xing had no interest in the explanation. Instead, he released a terrifying purple aura to intimidate them, clearly showing that he was not negotiating but commanding. The protagonist grew angry at what he heard but was restrained by his father, who quickly agreed that they would repay the debt, explaining that they just needed time to gather such a large amount of money. Lu Xing gave them half a month to produce the sum and sternly warned his former friend that if they failed to pay, he himself would mercilessly teach the boy a lesson. As they left, Lu Jinglong smirked mockingly. Returning home, the protagonist's parents were overwhelmed with worry. His mother, anxious, asked her husband what they should do, suggesting he try to beg his childhood friend for mercy. With little enthusiasm, the father replied that he would try to bring pork as an apology gift, but it was clear he was crushed under the weight of the 1 million debt. Seeing his parents' distress, the protagonist stood up and bravely declared that they should not worry because he would handle it. His father looked at him, not with anger but with concern, and told him he did not blame him for what had happened, only that in the future, if he was in danger, he should confide in his parents instead of bearing it all alone. With those words, the protagonist felt the heavy weight of his father's love and resolved that he needed to have his new spirit weapon forged immediately. He believed that once he grew stronger, Lu Xing would no longer be a threat. But before the conversation could end, his mother looked at him suspiciously. She asked if he was hiding something, pointing out how valuable the blood crystal twin flower was, and questioning how a simple butcher's son could possibly have such a treasure. Worried for her son's safety, she voiced her doubts. At that moment, the protagonist realized he could no longer keep it a secret. With a heavy heart, he confessed that he was not an ordinary person. His parents were stunned, but then his mother suddenly misunderstood. Her eyes widened as she asked if his secret was that he wasn't attracted to women. The protagonist sighed and shook his head, but his mother pinched his cheek and said she was open-minded, reassuring him that it was perfectly fine if he liked men instead, encouraging him to pursue his own happiness. His father even nodded silently in agreement, then awkwardly added that it was fine as long as his son didn't approach him, leaving the protagonist completely speechless. Annoyed, he clarified that he was not attracted to either men or women. He revealed the real reason. He had a mental condition that caused him to see all living beings as pigs. Suddenly, the scene shifted to his perspective, where his parents appeared as two pig-like beings, stunned in shock. In an instant, his father gripped his shoulder, struck by a chilling realization. Because he was a butcher and saw all beings as pigs, it meant he could kill any creature as if it were just a pig. The protagonist nodded in confirmation. Finally understanding the meaning behind it all, his mother asked her husband if their son's profession was actually combat type. With full trust and newfound pride, his father confirmed it. With the truth revealed, the father's demeanor changed. He called his son to follow him, deciding that it was time to teach him real skills. Under the dark sky illuminated by the moon, he led the protagonist along a long mountain path. He explained that after many years of pig butchering, he had developed his own unique pig-slaying knife technique, and he would pass it down to his son so that he could have something to rely on in times of danger. The protagonist was confused, reminding him that he had already caused them a debt of 1 million, so why would he still be taught? But with a serious face, his father said that while 1 million was indeed a huge amount, the safety of his son was far more important. He began the lesson with a simple principle. The greatest truths are simple, and so is pig slaughtering. Holding the sharp cleaver, he instructed his son to watch carefully, for he would teach only 3 moves. At the mountaintop, the air filled with powerful purple energy, appearing as countless blades in the sky. Surrounded by this force, his father raised the cleaver with both hands. With a mighty shout, he unleashed the awe-inspiring first strike, as if slicing through the very scenery, revealing a breathtaking view of the full moon and the stars in the cosmos. The protagonist could only stare from below, speechless in shock. He could not believe that his father, whom he thought to be a simple butcher, possessed such power. After the strike, his father calmly turned and named the technique Fallen Star. Without pause, he announced the second cut. He leapt into the air, the cleaver flashing with radiant energy, and with a powerful spin, released an immense wave of force that seemed to cleave the moon of the heavens in two. The protagonist cried out in disbelief, asking how his father could do such an impossible thing. Gently landing, his father explained that it was only an illusion. The strike warped space itself, refracting the light to trick the eyes. With a proud smile, he prepared the third and final move. This time, instead of the knife, he concentrated terrifying red energy into his fist. As his fist came down, he shouted the name of the technique, Sun Devourer. A blinding golden light erupted upward, forcing the protagonist to shield his eyes. Shocked, he asked his father if those techniques were truly meant only for pig slaughter, wondering what kind of pigs required such power. But his father sternly told him not to ask too many questions, for the day would come when he would need to use them. Determined, the protagonist promised to study diligently. When his father asked where his pig-slaying knife was, the protagonist explained that it had been broken in the fight against Lu Jinglong. His father handed him his own cleaver, telling him to use it for now. The protagonist took the weapon and was instantly stunned by its incredible weight, struggling just to lift it. As his father departed, the protagonist wondered how he had managed to slaughter pigs his entire life with such a heavy weapon. Left alone at the mountaintop, the protagonist began training. With great effort, he lifted the heavy cleaver and attempted the first move, fallen star, but lost his balance and fell. From a distance, his father watched, and in his thoughts, he reflected on the true hidden potential of the three techniques, that when his son one day reached the legendary level of the Emperor Confirmant realm, those three simple knife moves would be enough to kill gods and even immortals. The protagonist trained all night at the mountaintop. He poured all his strength into practicing the heavy cleaver, swinging it repeatedly with loud shouts, forcing his body until he grew tired and drenched in sweat. At sunrise, he finally collapsed onto the grass, completely drained of energy. After a few moments, he forced himself to sit up, still panting and holding the heavy weapon, while his whole body ached. His determination was strengthened by the memory of his father's worried face and Lu Xing's threats, pushing him to continue. With one last desperate shout, he released his remaining strength for one final attempt, calling out the name of the technique, Fallen Star. At that moment, he succeeded. He unleashed a powerful surge of energy that shattered the ground, broke rocks apart, and released a shockwave that shook even the distant mountain, startling a flock of birds. Panting heavily, he looked on, surrounded by a dim blue aura, exhausted but victorious. A small triumphant smile spread across his lips as he watched the result. A deep and wide scar was carved into the mountaintop. A blue system notification appeared, confirming his astonishing progress. Through the night of training, he had reached the level of a 9th-rank apprentice. His main attributes, strength, speed, and spirit, all reached 55. His Bloodshadow Butcher skill rose to level 2, and most importantly, he had learned his father's powerful new technique, the Fallen Star. The story shifted to a hospital room, where the sound of medical machines could be heard. The protagonist lay unconscious on the bed, completely drained after the intense training. In a nearby office, his mother sat with a female doctor, her face full of worry as she asked if her son was all right. The doctor, the same psychiatrist from the beginning, explained that the protagonist was fine and had only fainted due to exhaustion after a night of heavy activity. Upon hearing this, his mother's face darkened with anger. She secretly blamed her husband for pushing their child so hard and vowed to make him pay. The doctor continued her examination, reading her notes. She explained that based on the lactic acid in the protagonist's body, it appeared he had done 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 push-ups, and 1,000 squats in a single night. She added further that he had also run 100 kilometers. The protagonist's mother could not believe it and asked the doctor if she was joking and how it was possible for a person to do such a thing in one night. The doctor calmly replied that although it was impossible for a normal person, given the protagonist's mental state, she believed it to be true. Her mother's rage burned even more. She stood up and called her husband an animal, furiously declaring that she was going home to beat him until even his own mother would not recognize him. She left the office and slammed the door shut. Left alone, the doctor reflected on the unbelievable stamina of the protagonist, realizing that such an amount of exercise would have killed an ordinary person. A seductive smile crossed her lips, thinking that she needed to give the protagonist personal counseling that night. But when she returned to the hospital room, she was shocked to find the bed empty. She stood at the doorway, confused as to where her patient had gone. Having already escaped the hospital, the protagonist walked alone down the street. He thought about his training, realizing that the powerful Fallen Star technique consumed so much stamina, and so it should only be used as a last resort. Suddenly, he remembered, today was the day he could go to Master Tai Shin to claim the newly forged knife. He headed into the city, and before long, he arrived at a large building with a traditional design, with a sign that read, Ironheart Forging. He stood at the front, ready to meet the master blacksmith. Inside the forge, a large, muscular man with a messy beard was busy working. In the protagonist's perspective, the master looked like a massive wild boar grunting in acknowledgement of his arrival. Master Taishan confirmed the boy's identity, and the protagonist only nodded. The master explained that the steward of the Shaw family had already spoken to him, and he had worked all night to forge the knife the boy requested. He approached and looked at him with doubt, saying he had heard that the boy was just a simple pig butcher. It was strange, he said, that the Shaw family had spent so much and rushed him just to forge a weapon for a mere butcher. He suspected that the only reason would be if the boy had saved the young lady of the family. As he spoke, he opened a fine wooden box, revealing a beautiful, smooth, dark-bladed knife. The protagonist was about to reach for it, but Master Tai Shin stopped him, telling him not to be so hasty. The master, who in Yi Chuan's eyes appeared as a fierce red-eyed wild boar, explained the extraordinary quality of the weapon. He said it was forged from a piece of thousand-year-old cold iron, making it a high-quality, yellow-ranked weapon. He also gave a warning. A powerful knife chooses its owner. If the boy's strength was lacking, he might not even be able to lift it. The protagonist ignored the warning. He grasped the handle of the new knife, and with cold determination on his face, he raised the powerful weapon with startling ease. Master Tai Shin was shocked and frightened, almost struck as the boy lifted it. As the protagonist observed the blade, he thought to himself that it was lighter than the extremely heavy cleaver his father used. Master Tai Shin, who in his eyes looked like a trembling and sweating wild boar, stared in disbelief at how the boy could lift such a heavy weapon effortlessly. Holding the gleaming new weapon, the protagonist asked what its name was. The master stammered that it had no name yet, and since it now belonged to the boy, he should be the one to name it. Impressed by the wealth of the Shaw family, the protagonist thought for a moment and decided. With a serious face, he named his new weapon the dragon-slaying knife. The grand name was so overwhelming that Master Tai Shin literally choked, spitting out the wine he was drinking. He could only look on with a weary expression, thinking that the name was extremely tacky. Carrying his new weapon, the protagonist turned his mind to his next goal. He decided it was time to return outside the city, hunt monsters, and earn money to pay off his family's debt. He strapped the knife to his belt, knowing that the most important thing was to raise his rank. He believed that once he reached the next level of power, he would have a chance to face Lu Xing. As he walked down the city street, he overheard a conversation between two injured men. One complained that suddenly many different aggressive races and beasts were appearing, attacking people randomly as if they had gone mad. His companion agreed, adding his own terrifying experience of being chased for 10 miles by an armored bull, a beast usually known to be peaceful. Instead of being afraid, the protagonist's eyes flashed with a dangerous purple glow full of excitement. A wicked smile spread across his lips. He thought to himself that this was excellent news. Now, he had plenty to kill. After news spread about the increase of monsters, Yi Chuan returned to the dangerous border forest. Suddenly, he stopped, feeling intense unease. A system note appeared, stating that his high spirit attribute had enhanced his perception, allowing him to sense danger. He slightly turned his head to his back, feeling that someone was hiding behind the trees. Calmly, he shifted his head to the side, just as a blade came from behind, aimed at his back. The attack was fast, but he easily dodged it. From the shadows of the trees, 3 intimidating figures appeared and blocked him. The man who threw the blade, a 9th-rank apprentice, sneered arrogantly and asked if Yi Chuan thought he was just lucky to dodge. Another big man spoke up, saying that Lu Jinglong was right, and that Yi Chuan really dared to leave the city. He thought Yi Chuan was a coward who would just run away, leaving his parents and his debt behind. The third revealed their true purpose. He said they had been waiting for Yi Chuan for days, and that Lu Jinglong had ordered them that if Yi Chuan left the city, they were to break his tendons and drag him back by force. Yi Chuan was unfazed. Calmly, he drew his new weapon, the dragon-slaying knife. As he gripped its handle, a blue system notification appeared. It confirmed that his god-slaying sharp-edge talent was now active with the new blade, and its effect was even greater. He would gain 0.3 free attribute points for every pig he killed using this weapon. Yi Chuan was delighted in his mind, realizing that because of the high quality of the new blade, the bonus was 3 times greater than with his old knives. He faced the three with a dark and confident expression, raising his gleaming new weapon. He declared that he would show them the power of his new treasure, the dragon-slaying knife. The leader of the enemies wasn't afraid and mockingly asked what he called his weapon. Was it really the Dragon Slayer? Yi Chuan grinned with a terrifying look and confirmed it. Instead of being frightened, the three laughed loudly at the weapon's name. They nearly rolled on the ground, clutching their stomachs from laughter. They repeatedly mocked its name, asking if he thought of himself as some kind of legendary hero. But Yi Chuan only laughed in a strange way. He denied that he was a legendary hero. Suddenly, the air shifted, the red light shone in his eyes, and the blade was engulfed in a dark flaming aura. With a terrifying grin, he revealed his true identity. He was not a dragon slayer, but a pig slayer. While the two men continued laughing, the leader's laughter stopped, replaced by fear as he felt the chilling killing intent coming from Yi Chuan. Before the big man could finish his words, Yi Chuan was already in front of him in an instant. With one swift, continuous motion, he slashed the dragon-slaying knife across his neck. The man could only clutch at his wound as life drained from him. Immediately, a blue system notification appeared. He had successfully killed a two-legged pig, gaining a 5% level increase, 1% bonus damage against the pig clan, and 0.3 free attribute points. As the body fell, the other two were stunned. One asked if he was really dead. What just happened? Did the other even see it? Everything was so fast they couldn't follow it. In fear, the third man activated a speed-enhancing skill and fled, abandoning his comrade. The remaining one cursed his cowardly companion angrily. But only moments later, Yi Chuan appeared before him, and with a merciless swing of the gleaming blade, his head was severed. Another system notification appeared, confirming the second kill, with another level increase, bonus damage, and 0.3 free attribute points. Meanwhile, the last one kept running through the forest. He couldn't believe Yi Chuan's speed, thinking it was impossible. He couldn't keep up with his movements. To him, Yi Chuan was on another level, a monster. He tried to steal himself, thinking he was skilled in escape and no one could catch him. But his confidence didn't last long. The dragon-slaying knife struck his back with hair-raising speed and precision, piercing through him and nailing him to a tree. His life ended instantly. Yi Chuan slowly approached the corpse and pulled out his blade. The third system notification appeared, confirming the final kill and added rewards. He knelt down and said that they had started this. Then, he noticed a small scroll on the man's clothes. He immediately took it. Delighted, he said he didn't expect this. When he used it, a new system notification appeared. He had obtained a new movement skill, Phantom Shadow Step. When activated, it increased his agility by 30% for 30 seconds. He gave a vicious grin, pleased with the free skill he had gained. But it wasn't over yet. A massive clawed foot slammed into the ground, signaling the arrival of a giant monster. Yi Chuan immediately sensed its presence and leapt into a tree using his new skill to observe. From there, he watched the enemies he had killed. Suddenly, a monster full of black spikes, with many red eyes and a long tongue, approached one of the corpses. It immediately devoured the head. Seeing this, Yi Chuan wondered what kind of twisted creature it was. More monsters swarmed in and feasted on the corpses. Yi Chuan's expression hardened. With a cold grin, he decided he couldn't let them live since they ate humans. He activated Phantom Shadow Step, with the system confirming his agility boost by 30%. He quickly leapt from the trees and launched a downward attack. From the air, the monster noticed him and immediately unleashed a rain of sharp spikes. Yi Chuan was struck in the arm and body, but he didn't retreat. With overwhelming force, he attacked the monster using the glowing dragon-slaying knife, slicing the creature in half. A system notification appeared. He had successfully killed a spiked pig. He gained a 5% level increase, bonus damage, and 0.3 free attribute points. Only 80% remained before reaching the next realm. Though wounded, his red eyes burned fiercely. Despite the pain, he smiled, saying the wounds felt like nothing more than simple acupuncture. The two monsters sensed that something was strange around them and immediately turned around. They quickly moved in Yi Chuan's direction, their long tongues sticking out and their eyes glowing. The monsters froze when they saw Yi Chuan pretending to be one of them, acting as if he was eating a corpse. They were slightly confused and seemed to glance at each other. Then, they both returned to another corpse. A few moments later, one of the monsters moved to his front. They stared at each other for a moment. For some unknown reason, the monster was startled and frightened, and Yi Chuan used that moment to launch a swift attack. With a quick motion, Yi Chuan used his dragon-slaying knife and slashed the monster in half. The system notification immediately appeared, confirming that he had killed the monster, granting him a 5% level increase, a 1% damage boost, and an additional 0.3 free attribute points. He did not stop and quickly targeted the next monster, which was busy devouring the corpse of another bandit. With full strength, Yi Chuan raised his knife and brought it down, cutting the monster vertically in half. Once again, the system notification appeared, confirming that he had killed the monster, granting him a 5% level increase, a 1% damage boost, and an additional 0.3 free attribute points. After the battle, Yi Chuan tended to his wounds. He grimaced in pain as he pulled out a long thorn from his arm. Another system notification appeared, stating that he was now 70% of the way to the next level of power. With full determination, he stepped deeper into the darker and more terrifying part of the forest, thinking that he needed to reach the next level today. But he suddenly stopped when a gigantic creature burst out from the collapsing trees, a shield-covered rhino with a golden horn and glowing green eyes. Yi Chuan was shocked and remembered his strange thought earlier. He was right, and the monster was indeed a man-eater. The rhino roared loudly and charged at him. Yi Chuan quickly reacted and moved fast, dodging the attack with a perfect leap. As the monster passed beneath him, he swung his dragon-slaying knife in a powerful, glowing arc of energy, cutting the giant creature from below. The system notification immediately appeared, confirming that he had killed the monster, granting him a 5% level increase, a 1% damage boost, and an additional 0.3 free attribute points. While Yi Chuan knelt down to catch his breath, the rhino's corpse fell behind him. But then something strange happened. The huge body began to move, as if being pulled by an invisible force, like unseen threads. Yi Chuan was confused and asked himself what was happening. He thought the creature had turned into a zombie. A moment later, the corpse was dragged down into a large, dark crevice in the ground. Angrily, Yi Chuan shouted that someone was stealing his gold. He refused to let it go, so he jumped down into the crevice, holding his knife and yelling that he would fight for it to the death. When he landed, he found himself in a massive dark cave. To his shock, he saw that the walls were covered with thick, sticky webs, and hanging from them were wrapped bodies of various large monsters. But he stopped looking around when an even greater danger appeared from the darkness, a gigantic spider-like monster with countless glowing red eyes and sharp fangs. Without wasting time, the monster brought down one of its golden, sharp, and heavy legs. Even without looking, Yi Chuan immediately blocked the attack with his knife. His eyes widened in shock. When the dust settled, he saw the monster's full form, a massive spider with a body like steel and gleaming golden legs. His shock turned into greed when he realized that the legs were made of pure gold. A wide, crazed grin appeared on his face as he imagined how rich he would become if he could obtain them. With a loud shout, he declared that he would take those golden legs. Before he could move, the monster swiftly attacked with its 4 sharp golden legs. Expertly, he used his knife, blocking the rapid strikes from the spider's golden limbs. When its physical attacks had no effect, the monster changed tactics. It opened its huge mouth and released a large ball of white web, which immediately wrapped around Yi Chuan in midair and completely trapped him. Bound and unable to move, he watched as the monster stabbed his leg with one sharp golden leg. He instantly felt excruciating pain. He began vomiting dark green liquid as the poison spread through his veins. A blue system notification appeared, analyzing the poison. It was a type of venom that caused confusion and eventual madness in its victim. As Yi Chuan suffered from the poison, the massive spider moved closer, ready to finish him off. But then something strange happened. From within the thick web, his eyes began to shine with a bright blue energy as he tried to break free. With a powerful burst of energy, he shattered the web and escaped. However, the poison's effects were clear. His eyes glowed with a terrifying blue light, and his entire body was engulfed in a savage energy. He had entered a complete berserk state. As his eyes radiated an eerie energy, the spider hesitated to approach because of his strange aura. The poison did not weaken him. Instead, it turned him into a storm of destruction. He swung his knife relentlessly, blocking the simultaneous attacks from the golden legs. Because of the ferocity of his attacks, the monster was forced to retreat and defend itself. In fear, it tried to escape, but it suddenly realized it couldn't move. As it attempted to flee by shooting webs toward the ceiling, Yi Chuan grabbed the sticky thread with his hands, refusing to let his prey go. He used the web to pull the giant monster down. With one final roar, he raised his knife and brought it down with all his strength, slicing the monster from head to abdomen. When the monster finally died, Yi Chuan screamed in pain as the energy of madness consumed his body. The spider's body collapsed, green blood flowing out, and Yi Chuan lost consciousness. The system notification appeared, indicating his victory. He had reached the next level of power, the first rank climbing realm. His main attributes, strength, speed, and spirit, had all reached a perfect 100. An hour passed. Yi Chuan woke up beside a blazing bonfire, where a large piece of spider meat was being roasted. He wondered how he had leveled up and what had happened. When he looked around, he saw the large hole in the ceiling and the spider's golden leg lying nearby. He felt exhausted, but he had no memory of what happened after he was poisoned. Yi Chuan had no idea about his berserk rampage, so he assumed it was a miracle, and that the spider had somehow died on its own nearby. He took a skewer of cooked meat, ready to eat, but before he could take a bite, he heard a seductive voice. From within the cave appeared the demoness who had been following him for a long time. She said that the smell of the roasted meat was delicious and, with a sly smile, asked if she could have a little. The demon woman slightly bowed to Yi Chuan, her voice full of seduction as she commented on how fragrant the roasted meat smelled. She asked if she could have some. As she spoke, her eyes gleamed with a dangerous pink light. In her mind, she activated her charm ability, confident that any man who looked into her eyes would obey her and become like a dog following his master. But it didn't work on Yi Chuan. Without any reaction, he simply continued chewing the meat on his stick and coldly said that if she wanted to eat, she should catch her own food because it was barely enough for him. The demon woman froze, shocked and confused. She couldn't understand why her power wasn't working. From Yi Chuan's point of view, the reason became clear. In his vision, the seductive demon was merely a creature with the face of a pig, large horns, and a snout. He stared at her emotionlessly, wondering why she had horns. The woman changed her tactic and gave a sweet smile. She said it was fine if he didn't want to share, but she just wanted to ask a question. Yi Chuan ignored her, still eating the roasted meat. Annoyed, the woman asked again if he had seen the blood crystal twin flower in the area. She explained that it was a treasure she had cared for over several decades, and angrily said that her pet giant snake had also been killed. She stepped closer, staring sharply at Yi Chuan, and asked if he knew who did it. While chewing, Yi Chuan slowly realized what she meant. Panic hit him when he realized that he was the one who killed the beast and took the flower. Shocked, he choked on the meat. The woman noticed his reaction and directly asked if he was the culprit. Trembling in fear, he quickly shook his head and gave a forced laugh, saying it wasn't him. The woman just stared at him, expression unreadable. Out of fear, Yi Chuan quickly came up with an excuse. He said he knew who did it. A man named Lu Xing, and angrily added that the same man killed her pet snake. He even pretended to be angry at Lu Xing's cruelty. The demon woman smiled, pretending to believe him. She said she would go find Lu Xing, then turned around. But suddenly, she spun back, furious, and attacked with a huge clawed hand. She shouted, asking if Yi Chuan thought she was an idiot. Yi Chuan barely dodged and tried to block the powerful strike. Lightning sparks flashed where they clashed. Her eyes blazed with fury as she said she had known all along that he was the one. She explained that she remembered his scent, which was how she found him. Caught in his lie, Yi Chuan shouted in frustration, asking why she even bothered to ask if she already knew the truth. The woman smirked, amused by his desperation. Then she unleashed her true power. A terrifying red aura burst from her body, wrapping around the area like fire. The energy formed crimson shadows that shot toward Yi Chuan, wrapping around him and lifting him upside down in the air. He screamed in shock as the shadows gripped his legs. The woman glared at him coldly and threatened, "Tell me where the flower is, or I'll kill you right here." On the brink of death, Yi Chuan released his hidden skill, Bloodshadow Butcher. His eyes glowed with a sinister red light. The situation immediately turned. The demon woman was filled with terror when she saw her own eyes glowing red too. She was trapped in a horrifying illusion. In her mind, she saw herself lying on a giant butcher's table, bound, while a monstrous version of Yi Chuan stood before her, eyes burning with hatred, holding a massive cleaver, ready to butcher her. In an instant, the illusion shattered, but the fear lingered. The woman trembled, clutching her arm where a small cut had appeared. Yi Chuan took advantage of the moment, tore through the shadow bindings, and jumped down to the ground. He immediately ran, activating the nether shadow technique to boost his speed. As he fled, he shouted that she could take the meat and legs of the golden spider as payment for the flower. The woman snapped out of her daze and screamed in rage. Her body turned into a streak of crimson light as she chased Yi Chuan through the forest. While running, Yi Chuan realized how fast and powerful she was. He knew he couldn't outrun her. If he couldn't escape, he would have to use his final energy-consuming technique. But before she could catch him, a massive, fur-covered hand with sharp claws suddenly grabbed a tree. Two glowing red eyes shone in the darkness. A gigantic demonic ape emerged, roaring fiercely and blocking his path. Yi Chuan stopped for a moment, dodging the creature's powerful punch while shouting in confusion, asking where the pig-faced ape had come from. After dodging, the furious woman chasing him arrived at the scene. The woman, surrounded by crimson energy, landed and faced the monster. It roared, pounding its chest and releasing waves of energy. She also frowned in confusion, wondering where the beast came from. Enraged, she shouted for it to get out of her way. A violent battle broke out. The ape tried to crush her with its fists, but she was quick, dodging, spinning, and wrapping its head in red shadows. Seizing the opportunity, she stabbed it in the head with her sharp claws. The creature howled in pain, shaking the ground. She stood on its shoulder, ready to strike again, until the beast finally collapsed, defeated. After the fight, the woman's cold gaze turned back to Yi Chuan. She landed in front of him, only to be surprised when she saw he was no longer running. He stood before her, holding a knife, ready to fight. When she noticed his stance, her eyes widened. She recognized that technique. Yi Chuan raised the dragon-slaying knife with both hands. His body was surrounded by a thick purple aura, his face serious and focused. His eyes flashed with a terrifying orange light. In a heavy tone, he spoke the name of the technique his father had taught him, Fallen Star. Terrified and trembling, the demon woman knelt on the ground, unable to believe it was possible. No one used that technique anymore. She wondered if he was just fooling her. She couldn't take the risk. If he truly knew that technique, she was as good as dead. Not far from them, a sexy young woman spoke up, calling out to her uncle Chuan, saying that something was happening ahead. Yi Chuan and the demon woman immediately sensed the approaching group. A muscular man carrying a huge hammer, a beautiful and curvy woman in revealing clothes, and a man with an eye patch were coming their way. The demon woman thought they were Yi Chuan's companions, so she said she didn't expect him to have backup. She asked if he brought her here just to get her caught. She even shouted that he should remember this before quickly flying away. Yi Chuan was stunned, thinking to himself, "You're just finding an excuse, and then you run away." Miss Yang's group arrived behind Yi Chuan while he remained silent. Uncle Qian couldn't believe what he saw. Lying before him was the massive corpse of the wind-fire ape. He shouted at Miss Zhang, saying that the wind-fire ape that escaped from their team was killed by this kid. Raising his hands, Yi Chuan firmly said it wasn't his fault, that he was just passing by. The sexy Miss Zhang slowly approached him and seriously asked for his name. Yi Chuan didn't answer immediately, thinking they might be planning to frame him. No matter what he said, no one would believe him given the situation. He introduced himself and told them to listen, but the woman cut him off and suddenly grabbed his hand, inviting him to join their Nine Heavens alliance. The man with the eye patch smirked at the sight of her holding Yi Chuan's hand, but in Yi Chuan's eyes, the beautiful woman's hand looked like that of a pig, making him feel uneasy. Yi Chuan recalled that the Nine Heavens alliance was one of the three major powers in Xinjiang, alongside the Thunder Lion Alliance and the Xia clan. Uncle Qian walked closer to the giant ape's corpse. He couldn't believe that this kid could kill a wind-fire ape at the 7th rank of the Climbing Pond realm in just one strike. He must be a hidden genius. Perfect timing too. They were recruiting members, and having him would be a huge gain. Yi Chuan thought about how terrifying that demon woman was, killing a 7th rank Climbing Pond realm beast in an instant. She might even become a problem for him someday. Still, he figured it wouldn't be bad to have some allies. Miss Zhang asked him what he thought. They were planning to face the Flame Blade King and needed powerful teammates. The girl was surprised when Yi Chuan asked who the Flame Blade King was. She thought, isn't he a combat class, but doesn't even know the Flame Blade King. She explained that the levels of professional advancement were as follows: Apprentice Realm, Climbing Pond Realm, Master Realm, and Grandmaster Realm. Each realm was divided into 9 smaller ranks. Once someone surpassed the 9th rank of the Grandmaster Realm, they could be sealed as a king. The Flame Blade King was already a being in the sealed king realm. Yi Chuan asked what one could gain from defeating him. The man with the eye patch scoffed and called him an ignorant kid, explaining that if he could defeat a powerful sealed king realm expert, he could inherit that person's title and rank. But that wasn't the kind of battle just anyone could attempt. Yi Chuan thought, so that means, with just one victory, you reach the top instantly. Of course, he wanted to give it a try. After a moment of thought, he boldly decided to join the Nine Heavens alliance. The girl happily approached him, saying, "Great. We've gained another member for our team, one step closer to success." The man with the eye patch clicked his tongue in annoyance, saying, "How naive." Meanwhile, Uncle Qian took his knife and stabbed it into the beast's body. Yi Chuan saw him struggling and asked if he was skinning it. Miss Zhang confirmed he was right. To approach the Flame Blade King, one needed armor resistant to extreme heat, crafted from the hide of the wind-fire ape. Without it, entering his territory, the Burning Sky Valley, would melt a person instantly. They had planned to skin it after capturing it, but didn't expect it to bite through the metal chains and escape. Yi Chuan volunteered to do the skinning himself, boasting that he was skilled at such tasks. The woman was amazed and couldn't believe he could skin a beast. With a serious look, Yi Chuan declared he was experienced. He jumped onto the corpse, drew his Dragon Slayer knife from his waist, and with swift movements that left blue streaks of light in the air, he began cutting. After just a minute, he had perfectly removed the beast's hide. He placed it on a large cloth and carefully wrapped it up. The two men were left speechless at Yi Chuan's skill, and even Miss Yang's eyes widened in admiration at his surprising talent. Once they were done, they began walking away from the area. Uncle Qian told Miss Zhang that since they had obtained the hide, they could now craft the fire-resistant armor. Everything was ready. This time, they would surely reach the sealed king inheritance before anyone else. But suddenly, three figures appeared ahead, blocking their path. The man standing in the middle looked at them with a frightening dark blue aura. Miss Zhang immediately recognized them. It was the Thunder Lion Alliance. She wondered why they were there. The three men grinned, and their leader, the one in the middle, called out to Miss Zhang, asking if she could hand over the Windfire Ape's hide to them. With a serious look, Miss Zhang asked the leader if he had known about their plans. Were they lying in wait here? The leader replied, Miss Zhang, sharp as always. He probably knew what would happen if they didn't hand it over. He drew two sharp weapons with a grin fixed on his face. Uncle Chuan flared up, shouting that they should dare to act now that they had seen them. His hammer would not show them mercy. Suddenly a comrade behind him spoke. Chuan. He said, to be safe, hand the Windfire Ape to me and I'll go fetch reinforcements. Without hesitation he tossed the wrapped ape hide toward him. But Chuan suddenly leapt and clutched the wrapped hide tightly. Chuan cried out in surprise, shocked by what happened. He shouted at the protagonist, what are you doing? Give it now. While still holding the bundle, the protagonist said he'd skinned it himself, so of course he would hold it. He'd keep it safer. Chuan clenched his teeth in anger and was about to retort, but Miss Zhang cut him off by calling his name. Grinning, the enemy leader said, looks like your Nine Heavens Alliance isn't united. Miss Zhang glared at Chuan in annoyance. She thought that at a time like this, the first thing he thought about was hiding the Windfire Ape. She realized he was a traitor, a dark red aura flaring as his eyes flashed. She angrily asked Chuan if he dared betray the Nine Heavens Alliance. He answered loudly, pointing at Chuan, why suspect me rather than that newcomer? That guy doesn't even look like a traitor. Hearing that, the protagonist fell into a brief silence and stared at the girl. Meanwhile, Uncle Chuan suddenly moved behind Chuan. He raised his huge hammer, his eyes glowing red, and angrily shouted, traitor. But Chuan spoke calmly, saying he could not stand the unreasonable actions of young ladies who acted without reason. Uncle Chuan slammed his hammer down with great force, leaving a heavy boom in the air. Chuan managed to dodge and said every man for himself. The Thunder Lion Alliance had promised him reward many times, and that filthy brat ruined everything. Chuan retreated and approached the leader, addressing him as Lord Lei, saying, we almost had it. Now we'll have to go hard. Uncle Chuan attacked again, directly facing the two. As he raised his huge hammer, he shouted to Chuan that he knew what he did to traitors. Chuan taunted him back, calling him, big dummy, and boasting that with his speed Uncle Chuan couldn't even touch him. Before Uncle Chuan's attack landed, Lord Lei intercepted. With a sweep he sent the massive hammer flying. The force left a gust in the air. Grinning with a dark aura, he ordered, kill that brat and snatch the hide for me. Uncle Chuan stood stunned, staring at his massive hammer still vibrating from the impact. His eyes widened in shock as he realized, he's broken through to second stage Master Realm. Smiling and emitting a dark, pale purple energy from his body, Lord Lei said, we came prepared to deal with the Nine Heavens Alliance. None of you are leaving today. His eyes glowed red as he charged at Uncle Chuan. His twin swords were wrapped in purple light, cutting through the air. Uncle Chuan managed to block the attack but struggled against its power. He tried to counter with his hammer, but Lord Lei leapt swiftly into the air, preparing to strike again. Meanwhile, Chuan stared seriously at Chuan while holding the weapon on his back. He sprinted toward Chuan, who still clutched the wrapped hide. But Chuan suddenly paused and then leapt upward. Miss Yang's successive attacks came at him, powerful strikes that caused the ground to explode. He was forced back and landed beside Lord Lei's two subordinates. Lord Lei ordered them to stop Miss Zhang. Don't let her move. They looked at each other, then began attacking Miss Zhang. One used fire attacks, another unleashed water. Before they could hit her, she struck back with her musical weapon, intercepting the attacks with sharp blue energy from her gestures. Jawan glancingly thought, Yi Chuan is only a first-rank climbing pond realm newcomer. He can't match 5th-rank climbing pond realm Jawan. Jawan targeted Yi Chuan again. As he rushed forward, he mocked Miss Zhang for recruiting trash as backup, saying she'd pay for her shame. Miss Zhang cried out to Yi Chuan in fear and warned him to be careful. Before Jawan could get close, Yi Chuan released a terrifying dark red presence. Jawan froze, eyes wide with fear as an image formed in his mind. He saw himself bound to a cross with a pig's face. A system notification popped up saying the Bloodshadow Rhinox had been activated. The Bloodshadow Rhinox reached level 3. Yi Chuan raised his weapon, surrounded by a dark blue aura. With a sweep of his blade, Jawan was pushed back in fright. Then Yi Chuan used Nether Shadow Sweep. He vanished from Jawan's sight and reappeared behind him. Feeling it, Jawan prepared to attack, shouting, "You brat, you want to race me? You're still too green, can you even catch me?" But he was stunned when he saw Yi Chuan block the wrapped hide. He thought, this thing must not be damaged. Then, in an instant, Yi Chuan slashed his thigh. Jawan fell in pain while Yi Chuan taunted him as dog scum daring to play dirty. Yi Chuan approached Jawan with a frightening smile. Holding his cheek, he said, "Got you." When Miss Zhang saw this, she thought, this kid is extraordinary. Even as a first-rank climbing pond realm, he fights above his grade and kills foes far stronger than himself, unless his profession is a god-tier combat profession. Yi Chuan glanced back at Miss Zhang, who was still engaged in battle. Noticing Yi Chuan had finished Jawan, she called for his help, but he ignored her and instead looked toward the continuing fight between Uncle Qian and Lord Lei. Uncle Qian managed to block Lord Lei's powerful attack, but Lord Lei's twin swords released purple lightning that flowed through Uncle Qian's body. He cried out in pain from the lightning's power. Staring at Lord Lei, the protagonist thought, catch the leader first. Right now we must take out that Thunder Lion Alliance leader. Under the power of the purple electricity from Lord Lei's sword, Uncle Qian was almost on his knees, blood flowing from his mouth. With a dark expression and surrounded by a dark presence, Lord Lei said, the gap of a stage in the Master Realm is like a chasm between heaven and earth. He cannot keep up with it. Inside his Thunder Net domain, his body gradually became numb until he could no longer move. It suggested that he join his companions underground. Suddenly, the protagonist appeared behind Lord Lei, holding his shoulder, which startled him and widened his eyes. The protagonist informed him that he was not dead yet. Curious, he immediately turned to the protagonist. But the protagonist immediately used his Bloodshadow Butcher. His eyes glowed a terrifying red, and so did Lord Lei's. In his consciousness, he was like a wild boar screaming in pain while being tortured by the protagonist using the boar's electricity. He realized it was an imaginary skill, so he immediately bit his tongue. Next, he blocked the protagonist's powerful attack with his sword. Their weapons clashed. Lord Lei thought this child's skill came only from the climbing pond realm, yet he was affected. He believed it was a god-tier skill. This person should not be allowed to live. Uncle Qian shouted at the protagonist to run because he could not match him. The difference in their realms was too great. Before he could move, Lord Lei smiled and pushed the protagonist's weapon upward, saying that no one could escape now. He kicked the protagonist hard in the stomach, and with such force, he nearly slid across the ground. While the protagonist lay on the ground, Lord Lei asked if he dared to fight him in this trivial realm. The protagonist did not move but slightly smiled and pretended to be dead. Uncle Qian forced himself to stand while thinking of the protagonist, using his life to give him a moment. He gripped his weapon tightly and leapt into the air above Lord Lei. He would use the opportunity given by the protagonist. He immediately shouted, "Mountain-splitting overload hammer." His hammer grew in size and fell rapidly toward Lord Lei. Before it hit, Lord Lei's sword released red electricity. It flowed from the hammer into Uncle Qian's body. He was wrapped in red electricity, writhing and screaming in pain. While lying on the ground, Lord Lei approached, his eyes glowing red, and red light radiating from his entire body. Despite the difficulty, Uncle Qian forced himself to speak. He said, "Doesn't he know Miss Yang's background? He could kill her, but if he touches Miss Zhang, the Nine Heavens Alliance will not let him go." Lord Lei asked what joke he was speaking of regarding the Nine Heavens Alliance. Did they still think they could stand on equal ground with the Thunder Lion Alliance? He said not to worry, they would not kill Miss Zhang. Their brothers there were planning to have fun with Miss Zhang first. Uncle Qian screamed at what he heard, begging them not to do it. If they had courage, they should come to him. Their conversation was interrupted when a strong energy suddenly appeared behind Lord Lei. He turned in shock. It was almost in his face. He tried to dodge, but he was still hit. The force of the attack made him scream in pain. The protagonist used the skill taught by his father, Falling Star. It left a long mark on the ground and damaged half of Lord Lei's body. Uncle Qian was stunned by what happened, almost speechless. While holding his injured shoulder and arm, Lord Lei could not believe this child was still alive. He wondered what kind of method the protagonist had used this time. Meanwhile, the protagonist held his body. He thought that even the golden-scaled soft armor had broken from that kick. If not for its protection, he might have truly died earlier. With a frightening gaze, the protagonist said, "He thought I was dead and neglected his guard. That moment became the start of my counterattack." Uncle Qian was amazed, thinking that one should not be deceived by how foolish he looked. His instincts in combat and awareness were on a level far beyond his realm. What he did was brilliant. By merely pretending to be dead, he tricked Lei Gang into lowering his defenses, allowing an attack to land. Lord Lei realized that a master was here, it was better not to linger. He shouted to the protagonist that he was skilled and that he would remember him. Then he quickly leapt into the trees to escape, saying that they would meet again. Uncle Qian could not believe he was escaping. Meanwhile, he noticed the protagonist slowly falling while holding his weapon. He immediately caught him, worrying about what was happening. Miss Zhang quickly approached, asking both of them if they were okay. Uncle Qian replied to Miss Zhang, "At this moment, I truly admire his eyes for talent." He explained that this child saved him in a critical moment and even seriously injured Lei Gang, yet Lei Gang still escaped. While carrying the unconscious protagonist, he said that the child owed his life to him. When they returned to Qingcheng, whether it was a massage, festival, or fine wine, he would serve him properly. Miss Zhang tapped him and told him to stop teaching him bad habits. Watching the unconscious protagonist, Miss Zhang thought she could not understand why. An enemy that even Uncle Qian could not handle. How did one person from the first-rank climbing pond realm manage it? Not far away, Jia Wan's hand suddenly moved. They felt it, and the three of them looked. His eyes were glowing red. They saw he was still alive and slowly crawling away. Uncle Qian immediately blocked him with his large hammer. He stood in front of him, emitting a pale red presence and glowing bright red eyes. Jia Wan was terrified of Uncle Qian, begging for mercy. He knew he had made a mistake. He said he did it only because his wife was pregnant and his mother was sick. He really only needed money. Grinning, Uncle Qian said to rest peacefully. For the sake of their past friendship, he would take care of his wife, and every night, he would also wipe shampoo from his child. Jia Wan screamed, trying to stop it. But he was mercilessly struck hard on the head, blood scattering around. Tio Qian told Miss Zhang that he suspected the Thunder Lion Alliance wouldn't let them go that easily. Now that they were wounded, they could be ambushed before they even made it back to the city. But Miss Zhang calmly replied that there was nothing to worry about. She had already sent a signal, and at any moment, the Nine Heaven Alliance's people would arrive to pick them up. From a small box, Miss Zhang took out 2 pills and handed them to Yi Chuan and Tio Qian. She explained that they were high-grade medicine designed to quickly heal their injuries. Yi Chuan thought to himself that a single pill like that must cost at least 50,000, proving how wealthy and powerful the Nine Heaven Alliance truly was. Without hesitation, he swallowed the pill along with Tio Qian. Yi Chuan was amazed at how fast it worked. He could feel his strength returning almost instantly. But then he suddenly remembered what happened earlier, when he was kicked by the enemy. He asked Miss Zhang about the sonic attack she had used against the Thunder Lion Alliance and wondered if she could use it against him as well. Miss Zhang immediately understood what Yi Chuan meant. He wanted her to use her sound wave attack so that he could train his movement. Yi Chuan nodded in agreement. He knew that the Nether Shadow Sweep was a scroll-based skill that could only improve through continuous practice. It was also the only movement-type skill he had for now. If he ever faced a real expert and couldn't keep up with their speed, he would be in big trouble. He needed to find a way to upgrade that ability. Miss Zhang smiled and agreed. She said that while Yi Chuan had been a great help earlier, her cultivation realm was still higher than his, and she was worried that if he wasn't careful, he might get hurt. A few moments later, Yi Chuan stood before Miss Zhang, both of them meeting each other's eyes, both ready. Watching them, Tio Qian thought this was a good chance to see the boy's true strength. He even wondered if the skill Yi Chuan used earlier was actually a god-tier ability. Miss Yang's eyes gleamed as energy filled the air around her. When she began plucking the strings of her musical weapon, it released a powerful shockwave that spread rapidly toward Yi Chuan, who simply stood there silently. Before it could hit him, Yi Chuan activated the Nether Shadow Sweep. His eyes glowed red, and in one swift motion, he dodged the first attack. He shouted, telling her to increase the intensity. He could still go on. Miss Zhang grew annoyed. Her sound wave technique was her specialty. If she couldn't even defeat someone of the second rank, it would be a disgrace. She waved her hands, releasing a series of shockwaves, but Yi Chuan effortlessly dodged each one as if he were merely playing. Seeing this, Miss Zhang decided to use her full power. She pulled all the strings of her instrument, her eyes flashing brightly, and unleashed a storm of sound wave attacks that all struck toward Yi Chuan at once. Tio Qian, witnessing the scene, realized that Miss Zhang was now serious. He began to worry that she might accidentally kill Yi Chuan, which would be a huge problem. Meanwhile, Yi Chuan released a terrifying crimson aura. His eyes blazed red as he dodged each attack, silently counting his movements. Miss Zhang and Tio Qian were both stunned. The air around him seemed to swirl with red energy each time he moved. He reached the 19th count, but then froze. A powerful wave of energy was coming at him, one that he knew he couldn't dodge. He quickly drew the dragon-slaying sword and, using all his strength, blocked the incoming attack. The force of the blast pushed him back several steps, but he managed to withstand it. Instead of fear, a smile appeared on his face. "I like this," he whispered. Then a system notification sounded. Nether Shadow Sweep upgraded to level 2. Effect. When activated, the user's speed increases by 40% for 1 minute. Fuming, Miss Zhang said she wanted to go another round, but Tio Qian immediately stepped in. He told her that was enough. It was only a spar, and there was no need to go overboard. While they were talking, the Nine Heaven Alliance's reinforcements finally arrived. Miss Zhang turned when she heard her name being called. 2 men approached, apologizing for arriving late. She closed her eyes and told them it was fine. For now, the Thunder Lion Alliance wouldn't dare cause any more trouble. They decided to head back. Tio Qian started packing up their equipment, and together, they began walking away. As they left, Miss Zhang turned to Yi Chuan and asked if he wasn't coming with them back to the city. Yi Chuan scratched his head and said they should go ahead. He still had something to take care of. Concern filled Miss Yang's voice as she told him to be careful, and that when he returned, he should come to the Nine Heaven Alliance. She would prepare a special gift to thank him. Yi Chuan waved slightly as he watched Miss Yang's group disappear into the distance. Then he hurried into the forest, hoping that the treasures he left behind were still there. When he arrived, he saw the golden legs of the giant spider he had defeated earlier. A mischievous grin appeared on his face. His golden scales armor may have been destroyed, but those golden spider legs were enough to earn him some powerful new equipment. He carefully packed them into a container, wrapped them securely, and slung it over his shoulder. When he returned home, he swung the door open and cheerfully called out, "Mother! Father! I'm home!" But his eyes widened in shock. The house was empty. Everything was in chaos, broken and overturned. He dropped what he was carrying and frantically searched every corner, sweat dripping down his face in panic and fear. He kept shouting, calling for his parents. On the floor, he saw a shattered photo of the three of them. Picking it up, a realization struck him. Lu Xing. Rage exploded inside him. His eyes burned crimson, releasing a terrifying aura. Shaking with fury, he screamed, his voice trembling. "Where did you take my family?" Yi Chuan immediately headed to Qingcheng Wealth District, where the private estate of the Lu family was located. When he arrived, even before he could enter the large gate, two guards blocked his way. They asked who he was, saying this was Brother Lu's private estate, so trespassing was forbidden. Annoyed and enraged, Yi Chuan shouted at them, telling them to move aside, his eyes blazing with fury. Out of fear, the two guards stepped back, sweating heavily. Inside the estate, Lu Xing was relaxing, drinking wine while being served by two sexy women. Meanwhile, Lu Jinglong was training with a wooden sword, swinging it repeatedly as he thought about what Yi Chuan had done to him. He muttered that the next time they met, Yi Chuan would surely regret it. His thoughts abruptly stopped when the large gate slammed into him after Yi Chuan kicked it open. Due to its weight, it crushed him, causing him to vomit blood. He couldn't understand what was happening and wondered if it was an explosion. When Lu Xing heard the noise, he shouted in anger, asking who the bastard was who wanted to die and dared to kick his door. In his rage, he nearly crushed his wine glass in one hand. Yi Chuan walked in and stepped on the large door beneath which Lu Jinglong was pinned. His eyes glowed red as he gritted his teeth in fury, slowly walking forward while releasing a dark aura from his entire body. Lu Xing greeted him with a grin, delighted to finally see Yi Chuan, the very person he'd been looking for. His men who were supposed to protect him had died miserably, and he wondered if Yi Chuan was behind it. Yi Chuan didn't answer. Instead, he asked where his parents were. Lu Xing laughed and said that when a child goes astray, it's the father's fault. And the sin Yi Chuan had committed would fall upon his parents. He added that since Yi Chuan was here, he would kill him to avenge his men. Meanwhile, Lu Jinglong remembered how his father had returned earlier, looking terrified. Perhaps that was why he had followed Yi Chuan's parents. Yi Chuan drew his dragon-slaying knife, saying his parents were his reverse scale. If anyone touched it, someone would die. But Lu Xing mockingly replied that if Yi Chuan was worthless, he wasn't even done speaking when Yi Chuan suddenly punched him with immense force in the face. Lu Xing was sent flying and nearly shattered the wall from the impact. Lu Xing couldn't believe it. Yi Chuan's aura had already reached the climbing pond realm in just a few days. Luckily, he had advanced early to the 6th rank climbing pond realm, an absolute level suppression. Lu Xing smirked and said that with such strength, Yi Chuan still dared challenge him. According to him, Yi Chuan was losing his mind. Slowly, a stone shield formed on his body until he was fully covered in rock armor. It reduced agility but greatly increased strength, defense, and provided 40% extra protection against sharp weapons. Still pinned beneath the heavy door, Lu Jinglong shouted at Yi Chuan, saying that forcing his father to use his true power meant death. At that moment, one of Lu Xing's eyes glowed red. He prepared to attack with his fist. When he released the punch, Yi Chuan felt its power and immediately used Nether Shadow Sweep, causing him to vanish from Lu Xing's sight and reappear behind him. He attacked with the dragon-slaying knife, but it barely damaged the rock armor. Lu Xing used this chance to kick Yi Chuan with tremendous force. Yi Chuan was hurled back until he crashed into the wall. Lu Xing slowly walked toward him, saying that Yi Chuan should know there was a gap he could never cross. Boastfully, he said Yi Chuan couldn't break his defense, and with just one touch, he would die. A notice appeared. Damage from pigs has decreased by 65%. Yi Chuan slowly stood up, staring seriously at his opponent, then returned his weapon to his waist. Lu Xing wondered how Yi Chuan was still standing after he had used full force earlier. He couldn't believe it had almost no effect. Clenching his fist, Yi Chuan said that if his sword couldn't break the armor, then he would use his fist. Lu Xing arrogantly invited him to try. Let them see his flesh against the stone armor. Lu Xing was shocked when Yi Chuan suddenly appeared in front of him, preparing to strike. In a flash, Yi Chuan delivered an extremely powerful punch to Lu Xing's stomach, his eye glowing red. A notice appeared. Damage to pigs has increased by 500%. Yi Chuan roared in anger and drove his fist with full force into Lu Xing's body. Lu Xing's eyes widened as his face turned pale. He couldn't believe this boy's punch was like a cannon blast. His rock armor was nearly shattered. Before he could recover, Yi Chuan attacked again, a powerful punch directly to Lu Xing's head. He collapsed, and the armor broke apart. Pieces of the stone shield and even his teeth flew off. Releasing a blood-red aura and with glowing eyes, Yi Chuan grabbed Lu Xing by the hair and used Blood Shadow Butcher. Lu Xing screamed in terror, and in his consciousness, he felt like he had become a bloodied, sweating wild boar. Yi Chuan repeatedly punched various parts of his body, shouting over and over as he demanded to know where his parents were. Meanwhile, Lu Jinglong saw this and panicked. He screamed in his mind for Yi Chuan to stop the fight. He knew that if this continued, his father would die. He wanted to help but couldn't move, especially his legs, because he was terrified he might be next. Helpless, he cried while trembling, saying that Yi Chuan had gone insane and begging him to spare his father. Yi Chuan stood up, eyes glowing and releasing a dark red aura as he stared at Lu Xing. Although Lu Xing was brutally beaten, he struggled to speak, and said that his parents had been taken by someone else. Yi Chuan shouted furiously, demanding who had taken his parents. Lu Xing explained in fear. Yesterday, he really went to their house to collect 1 million. But when he arrived, he saw 3 tall figures dressed in black appear inside their home. When Yi Chuan heard this while preparing his fist, he asked Lu Xing if he dared to lie to him. Lu Xing burst into tears. Trembling in fear, he told Yi Chuan that he was not lying. He explained that his father seemed to be arguing with those people about something. The scene showed Lu Xing going to Yi Chuan's house. While outside the gate, he peeked inside. He saw Yi Chuan's father arguing with the figures wrapped in black cloth. One of them immediately sensed him. Annoyed, it turned to him, followed by its 2 eyes glowing and releasing a strong energy that directly struck Lu Xing. After that, he fell to the ground and lost consciousness. Back to the present, he explained to Yi Chuan that when he woke up again, his parents and the men in black were gone. Still angry, Yi Chuan asked how he could prove what he was saying. Lu Xing immediately moved and took something from his clothes. He told Yi Chuan that after they left, he found something, a letter left by his parents for him. Yi Chuan froze, staring at the letter being handed to him. When he took it, he immediately opened it and slowly unfolded the paper. The letter said that his father once thought he would live as an ordinary butcher, that the 3 of them would live peacefully and well. Until the day he said he saw all beings as pigs. That was when he realized it was a cruel joke of fate. They could no longer stay by his and his mother's side from now on. He needed to walk his own path. He must always be an understanding son. His father believed he could take care of himself. He must not look for them. He was not yet strong enough. He could not match them. As long as he lived happily and freely, that would be enough for them. Tears flowed endlessly from Yi Chuan's eyes as he recognized that this letter was truly his father's. The scene showed his father preparing the letter to place on the table while telling his wife not to be afraid. Since Yi Chuan had grown up, they should let him walk his own path now. If he wished to climb the highest peak, as his father, he would lay the steps beneath his feet. If he grew tired of killing and only wished to live as an ordinary man, then as his father he would bear that burden for him. If he ever reached the peak, someday, they would meet again. After those words, they left the letter on the table with the note that it was for their beloved son. Back to the present, Yi Chuan left the Lu family's house. He walked quietly away while holding the letter. Lu Xing watched him leave, and at that moment Lu Jinglong came, helping his father stand. In a soft tone, he told his father that he would avenge him. His father angrily replied while crying. How could he avenge him, when even he himself could not withstand it? Holding his swollen cheek, he told his son that Yi Chuan would pay. From the table, he took his phone and began calling his cousin. On the other line, his cousin immediately answered. His cousin turned out to be the boss of the Thunder Lion Alliance, who had just fled from his battle with Yi Chuan. He was sitting on the sofa, his wound being bandaged by two sexy women. While speaking with his cousin, Lu Xing said he needed him to stand up for him because he almost got killed. Lord Lei angrily asked who in Qingcheng dared to trouble him. On the other line, his cousin said it was a butcher named Yi Chuan. Holding his wound, Lord Lei remembered the name Yi Chuan, a butcher. He smirked as his eyes glowed red and released a dark crimson aura around him, mocking Yi Chuan. He told his cousin to settle all old and new debts. The scene shifted inside Yi Chuan's house. He looked at their family photo, which was broken, but he fixed it in its frame. In his mind, he told his father and mother, wherever they were, that he would find them. He once again took the golden spider leg and placed it on his shoulder. With a determined gaze, he began walking out of their house. As he walked, he thought about what Lu Xing said, that just one glance from the men in black was enough to make Lu Xing lose consciousness. Their strength was surely beyond comprehension. He wondered to himself what his father and mother had done to be involved with such people. If he wanted to find them, the only thing he could rely on now was the Nine Heaven Alliance. He walked quietly in the middle of the city until he passed in front of Ironheart Forge. The man who made his dragon-slaying knife called him and seriously asked if the knife was working well. Yi Chuan coldly replied yes, but the man suddenly noticed the figure of a boar he was carrying. He asked what he was carrying on his back. Yi Chuan was about to answer, but the man was suddenly shocked when he saw what it was. He even shouted that it was the leg of a golden venom spider. Yi Chuan asked about the golden venom spider. The man with the boar figure joyfully stroked the golden spider leg. Then he asked Yi Chuan where he got it, because this thing's priceless. He added that with this, he could help enhance Yi Chuan's blade. The chapter ends here. Watch out for our upcoming uploads. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll always be updated on our future videos.